across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. Back tomorrow at 10 o'clock, right here on Talk. We are going to pick up on the migrant story. 710 to be precise, migrants crossing the Channel in a single day this week. That's the highest daily total for the entire year so far, bringing the yearly figure to nearly 10,000. As it emerged, the asylum appeals backlog has tripled to 87,000 cases, with each one taking an average of 67 weeks to resolve. What the hell are they doing over there? How can we stop this mess? Who can stop this mess? Can any party stop the small boat crisis? More on that in just a couple of moments. Also this afternoon, PIP welfare claims have topped 4 million for the first time, with the full bill heading towards 40 billion a year as claims for conditions including bedwetting, acne and tennis elbow continue. Are they for real over there at that department? Continue to pile up, of course, at the taxpayers' expense. Again, apparently nobody can do anything about this stuff. And the Law Commission wants to split murder into 2 degrees, a reform that could see people like the Nottingham killer Valdo Calocane face murder rather than manslaughter, though Labour rejected the very same proposals 2 decades ago. They always turn around a bit when they're in the big job, don't they? More on that as well. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. So, here's a question. Do you remember this man? It was a very simple message and a very simple solution.
I will do whatever is necessary to stop the boats.
Apart from, what was it? Stop the boats. Apart from that, Rishi Sunak, 2023. So another week, another 710 people crossing the English Channel. Another round of politicians standing in front of cameras, promising that this time, honestly, Governor, we really mean it. We'll solve it. The trouble is, we've been here so many times before. I mean, let's go back a little bit. Theresa May talked tough as Home Secretary. Priti Patel promised to make the route unviable. Suella Braverman talked about an invasion. James Cleverly inherited the problem. Yvette Cooper faced the same challenge and then disappeared without a trace. Shabana Mahmood, current Home Secretary, has been talking tough and doing naff all. Different slogans, different press conferences, remarkably similar numbers. Every party claims the answer. Breathtakingly, even our current Prime Minister says, even now, he's still on it.
Mark my words, we will stop this, we will smash the gangs, we will crack down on illegal working, we will remove people with no right to be here, and we will secure Britain's borders.
But you haven't. I mean, this is so glaring, you almost think you've missed it. Is this a joke? Is this a TV show presented by Stephen Mulhern where we're waiting for somebody to pop up and go, British public, we got you again? And, of course, the party that says it really will revolutionise immigration policy are currently hot favourites to be the next government. Nigel Farage.
We will stop what is a threat to our national security, what is a danger to girls and women on our streets. We will stop the boats.
We will stop the boats. We've heard it before. But, of course, Mr Farage is not yet the government. They are his promises. They sound emphatic. They sound sure. Will he? Could he? What do you think? The uncomfortable truth is that stopping small boats is far easier to promise than to deliver. Britain cannot control events in France. It cannot magically erase wars, poverty or people smuggling networks. It cannot patrol every inch of one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, yet neither can it simply shrug and accept ever-rising arrivals as inevitable. And this is the place we're at. We're in our own almost man-made pincer movement. The public frustration comes less from the numbers themselves and more from the sense that nobody appears to be in charge. Nobody has a flipping clue. Every government insists, we have a plan. Every opposition says, it will do better. Then reality arrives in a rubber dinghy. Will any party stop it completely? Probably not. Can a party reduce it significantly? possibly, but only through, realistically, cooperation with France, faster asylum decisions, tougher returns agreements and political honesty. The real scandal may be that honesty is the rarest commodity crossing the channel. Maybe we need Zach Polanski from the Green Party.
My policy is we can stop the small boats crisis. It's not a crisis, it's a manufactured crisis, and actually we could have safe and legal routes.
What a half-wit. That's his assessment. Yeah, we could just stop it. Yeah, we would just stop it, won't we? We're just mad. Are these people for real? These people live among us. These are our masters, if you like. These are the people that make the big decisions. But when it comes to this one, nobody can stop the boats. Rishi said it, Keir said it, Nigel promises it, even Zach Polanski reckons he's got an idea. Can any party, is there anyone out there, realistically, that can stop the small boat crisis? Because it is breathtaking how repetitive the words are from our political masters. Chloe Dobbs is with us, political commentator, regular with us on the programme. An afternoon to you, Chloe. Finn, our producer, told me that you said hello to me out there and I completely ignored you.
You normally do. You're
I never ignore you.
in the zone, prepping your show.
Can't ignore
Hard
the
at work.
Dobbs. Yes, I was in the zone indeed. What's interesting about this is that this is almost like politicians aren't even hiding the fact that they're rubbish at it. They literally say the same things. We'll stop the boats. Yeah, we'll do it. They get into power. Have you done it? No, we're doing it, though. But you're not doing it, because look, another 700 this week. It's like a joke. It's like someone is having a major laugh at our expense.
It is like a joke, but I do think that Starmer and his chums think that they are managing to hide the fact that they haven't stopped the boats. They keep on playing with the numbers. They don't just do it with the boats, they do it with NHS waiting lists, for example, but anytime you ask them about it, they say, oh, we're doing such a fantastic job. We've got this new deal with the French where we're chucking them 500 billion and probably 660 billion when they decide they've done a fantastic job when they haven't to the French. That's going to work amazingly. And we've deported, what's the number they keep saying now, is it 30 or 45,000 people who shouldn't be? I mean, it changes every 5 minutes. All these illegal migrants who shouldn't be here. But those of us who've got a few brain cells know that none of those people, or at least no more than a teeny tiny percentage, are people who have actually come across on boats. These are people who have overstayed their visas. The boats are the thing that is, well, it's very visual when we see all this footage of these boats coming into Dover. People see it constantly. We see people like Nigel, for example, going out in the channel and taking videos of this stuff. Everybody sees it and they are just coming in droves. And we've got a very warm week ahead of us, which is lovely for those of us who want a tan, but it's not good news for those of us who don't want to pay for a load of men to be housed at the taxpayers' expense, because there are going to be a heck of a lot more coming in this week. It's
bizarre, isn't it? Because we've now got sort of reform were always the kind of go-to perhaps what people sensed was something a little different. The language that Nigel, Richard Tyson, others would speak sounded a little more precise. It sounded more emphatic. It sounded as if the people saying it believed it, which I think is the big thing as well. When Keir Starmer says, I want to stop this, you tend not to really believe him. But then reform have now sort of been out-reformed in this respect, according to some, by Restore, because Restore supporters go, no, Farage, he's just like the old Tories, isn't he? He's Tory Mark II. They won't do nothing. Only Rupert has the answer to this. And there's another kid on the block claiming that they've got the answer. It's like a mad sitcom. Everybody's claiming, I know it, me, I've got the answer.
I know. I think that it is a total joke to suggest that Nigel Farage is exactly the same as the Tories and he won't do any different to them.
Correct.
You could say that on rhetoric, maybe there isn't a enormous difference between them, but the reality is that the Tories would just say things and they didn't have the tenacity to deliver. Of course, Reform are not yet in government. They will have to fight the blob, but at least they are saying, we will leave the ECHR for a start, which I think is the biggest block to stopping the boats. The Tories were unwilling to do that. Yes, they may have taken some of the Tories who are more on the right into the Reform Party, and that has angered a lot of people and made them say, oh, they're just the Tory party now. But I think the reality is that you have got to have some pragmatism in politics. You've got to have at least some people in the party who know how the system works. Even if they didn't do, you might say they didn't do an amazing job when they were there. You may say that Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, they could have fought harder to get Rishi Sunak
But in
to
fairness,
do what they
they
wanted
said
to
in
do.
their, you know, she said in her resignation letter that, you know, I had all these ideas, I was stopped from doing them. That was essentially what she said. And it's also a ridiculous claim that you can't be a former Conservative to join Reform. I mean, Nigel Farage is a former Conservative. Richard Tice is a former Conservative. Surely the fact
I'm a former Conservative.
Well, indeed.
I mean, almost all of us were Tory party members
so
before.
I don't understand why that would be weird. If you've left the party and joined another party, then that's surely OK, isn't it? If you feel that your party wasn't doing what you felt it should be doing or what you felt its original ethos is, then you're allowed to walk and join another party that does do what you want it to do.
That's the thing, is if you ask any person who is angry about the fact that there are Tories in the Reform Party, if you ask them, did you used to be a Tory party member yourself? They'll probably say, oh, yes, I was. There are many of us who stuck with the Tories and continued to vote for them or in the case of MPs, work for them with the hope that they could reform that party from within and push it in the right direction. But eventually there are many people who decided it's a lost cause, it's not going to happen, we need something new. And they've taken a gamble. But, I mean, switching to Reform for whether it's voters or MPs, that was a big gamble because this is a brand new party, and the fact that it has been able to organise and gain the momentum to become the leading party in the polls is, I mean, it's against all odds. At the general election, I don't think anyone thought that was going to happen. The people that voted for them, they were just trying to teach the Tories a lesson, basically.
And then things got serious.
The idea that any of these new parties, like Restore, can just do exactly the same like that, you just decide, oh, I'm not so sure about Reform anymore. It doesn't perfectly align with every single one of my beliefs, so I'm going to go with Restore. All you're going to do is split up the vote on the right, and you could end up with the Labour Party winning the next general election.
Yeah, I mean these are the very real.
Be careful what you wish for.
Not even vague possibilities.
There is absolutely, I mean, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I think there's absolutely no way that Restore is suddenly going to completely defeat the Reform Party in a similar way to how Reform got rid of the Tories, and that Restore's going to win the next general election. It's for the birds.
When people say, oh, you know, if they get into bed with the Tories, I'm done, the Tories, even though they are former Tories, are people just really talking about immigration there? Because I don't think it's based on the Reform's education policy or their NHS ideas. I mean, it's largely about immigration, isn't it?
And tax, I think. Because the tax level has been brought to the highest since the Second World War.
That's very true.
Under the Tories.
That's very true.
I think it's those main two things.
Or maybe it's the sort of common, you know, the common sense thing, the thing you can't completely put your finger on. Just that, like, let's get back to some logical thinking. It's a bit of that, isn't it? You know, bearing in mind, you know, I know it's great fun to give Keir Starmer a kicking about people go to jail for a tweet or having a knock on the door, but most of that stuff happened under the last Conservative government.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there are a lot of Tories who will have had completely different ideas to what their party ended up implementing, but they didn't have the tenacity to stand up to the so-called blob. They were quite happy to let Whitehall run the show. And as I said, they were unwilling to leave the ECHR. A lot of the madness that has been paid for and happened under the Tories with regards to immigration and the cost that comes with for housing so many people, both legal and illegal migrants. That was an unwillingness to stand up to a woke judiciary and the ECHR. So I think that what Reform brings is tenacity. And you get that impression from listening to people like Nigel and Zia that they are willing to do whatever it takes. They're supposedly going to have a top team of lawyers to try and take down the blob. I'm not suggesting it's going to be easy, but I think it's your best bet to see. It's a good gamble to, you know, we've tried the Tories and Labour enough times now to say, you know what, let's take the gamble and see if these people who seem like they're willing to do anything can actually manage to take down the blob. They might fail, but let's try.
That's about the sixth time you've very casually said take down the blob. And I'm thinking, what's the... Well, I know what the blob is, but, I mean, I'm not so sure they're actually the problem. I think the ECHR is a bigger problem than what people call the civil service. And the civil service are, you know, I think inherently probably just quite lazy. I don't think there's a sort of political, animated, motivated kind of campaign among people. The average civil...
I think they are woke, though, and I think that there is actually a lot of activism in the Home Office, in that you've got a lot of people...
Do you think people joined the Home Office because they wanted
trying to help people get in the country as opposed to trying to stop people coming in the country.
But I mean, they themselves can't stop it. If a government says, look, this is what we're doing, I mean, they can make your job logistically difficult. But I don't think we even got to that stage with the Conservatives. They were just hopeless at coming up with anything in the first place. Can I just ask you a question? You're a bright person, OK? I know you went to an iffy polytechnic, but you've got your head screwed on.
Thank you.
In that respect, when it comes to ECHR, the constant riposte from those that think it's an outrage to leave the ECHR is, but if you leave it, you also realise you've got to do this, this, this and this. Apparently there's this huge, horrendous tsunami and a domino effect, a tsunami of jip and hassle coming our way for other reasons. Is that true or false?
I don't think that you can just leave the ECHR with a click of the fingers. I mean, look how long it took us to leave the EU. I think it'll be easier than leaving the EU, but I don't think it will be easy. I think that reform have to be careful to not say, we will close the border, we won't have anyone coming in within a few days. Trump, without any trouble with the ECHR, was able to, almost with the click of the fingers, stop all illegal migration. The idea that we're going to manage to do exactly the same, you know...
Australia,
what we saw with both Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer with their stop the boats and smash the gang slogans is they were over-promising. Yeah. They could never stop every single boat or smash every single gang. And so I do think we can leave the ECHR, and we need to, of course, come up with our own Bill of Human Rights. Let's not suggest that leaving the ECHR means nobody has any human rights anymore.
Indeed, and nobody has suggested that should be the case. It's a bit like leaving getting rid of the Equality Act. I think they stand accused. You don't believe in equality? Yes, I do believe in equality. There's just other ways of getting to what you want to get.
I think if you look at most lefty rebuttal to reforms plans to leave the ECHR, it all says, but we're not going to have any human rights.
Well, yeah, but that's just the answer of a sixth former. I mean, it's just a stupid answer. I think it's fascinating. The ECHR, it reminds me of Brexit. You know, when people talked about the EU, and there's nothing wrong with believing that you think our future is served better in the EU. It's a democracy. 48% of people that voted came up with that conclusion. But it's this idea that being in the EU is a law of physics. That's the bit that I resent. Just intellectually, I resent the idea, because I look at other countries like, let's have a think, India, Japan, Australia. Hey, guess what? They're not in the EU, seem to be doing all right. And similarly with the ECHR, and you touched on it there. I mean, the idea that the world is going to fall apart and the sky's going to fall down if you leave this sort of man-made arrangement, I mean, it's for the birds, really. But it's only a hard sell, because I think when you mentioned the blob, I think what we've got really is groupthink. I don't know. I think it's more about complacency than it is political, where institutions, particularly within the EU, particularly within the civil service, just run with the status quo. They've got a template. They know where everything is. They can reach to it, point to it, label it, stick it on a spreadsheet. Everything's tickety. But you start messing with that, and it plays with their head. They go all funny. And there's nothing worse than a funny civil servant. And
hence you've got a lack of flexibility when you want to do something that's a bit outside of the box and to take any action quickly.
Let's take a brief pause. We are throwing that question out there. Can any party stop the small boat? Serious question. What do you feel as a voter? Who do you think that is? You had to point the finger. Would you now look at Kemi Badenoch and say, OK, she was part of the Tory government. She's also promising to leave the ECHR. She's got some experience in government. Could it be Kemi? Could it be Nigel? Might it be Rupert? Could Starmer come good? What are your thoughts? 0344 499 1000. Can any party or individual stop the small boats? Thoughts on that? Lines are open. This is Talk.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is. Oh, we're back. We are back. Sorry, Chloe was yakking in the corner again. God, couldn't stop her. Talking about her washing or something. Do you have a wash day? Do you actually have a day where you go, right, that's wash day?
In my head, it's Sunday, but it doesn't always happen.
Don't ever mess with your wash day.
And then it piles up. You've got more than can fit in the machine.
I honestly think it is the most kind of symbolic thing somebody can do is have a wash day and stick to a wash day.
Yeah, I'm not quite that organised.
Got to stick to it. Finn, do you stick to a wash day? Or do you just shove stuff in the... No, not washing yourself, washing your clothes. Yeah, we all wash every day. Well, most of us do. There's been a few iffy examples in the office over the years, but generally speaking, everything falls into place if you do your washing, your drying and putting away on the same day. Bingo. You're ahead of the game for the whole week.
The problem is I live with other people, and whenever I plan I'm going to do my washing on this day, I turn up to the washing machine and it's already got someone else's stuff in.
Oh, that kills me.
That's the most annoying thing about
house.
living with other people is someone else taking over the washing machine.
I have to wash the kids' clothes and
stuff
like that.
If we all had separate washing machines, that would be ideal.
Yeah, OK. Powder or tablet?
Tablet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Climate wrecker. Let's move to this story. It's the Brexit. It's the payouts. Brexit payouts for acne. Brexit benefit payouts for acne and bedwetting. This is just part of it. I'm not kidding you. Britain's disability benefit bill has hit a record 4 million claimants now. Over 500,000 people now claiming PIP, personal independent payments for anxiety alone. Claims are all rising sharply for skin complaints, constipation, bedwetting. So you've got constipation and bedwetting. You've got both. You're covering both problems there, I suppose, in a way. And tennis elbow, which is just a comedy name for having an achy arm, isn't it?
How?
On my arm, I feel I've got tennis elbow. But I've got tennis elbow.
The idea that you need to be...
Badminton foot.
The idea that you need to be struck off work.
It's ridiculous.
I know.
While you're limping, I've got snooker testicles. I know, it's just ridiculous. Tennis elbow.
I've seen plenty of times when people are hard at work whilst their arm is in a cast and, you know, they're typing with one hand and maybe they're slightly slower, but they're cracking on and they're still doing their job.
Some of us can type with our feet. Let's have a listen then to Keir Starmer talking about welfare reforms.
On the question of welfare reform, we're committed to reforming our welfare system. It doesn't work, it traps people, and it has to be reformed. And it also has to ensure that we've got a welfare system that is fit for the future. And that is why there will be a vote and we will press ahead with the reforms. Thank you.
But you won't. There will be... When they tried to tinker with it last time, and that wasn't even to cut it, it was just to cut the rate of increase, as I remember, the backbenchers went mad. They were turning into kind of mad Marxist zombies over there on the green benches, and they didn't know what to do with themselves. And Starmer lost his bottle and thought, I better not upset that lot, so they cancelled it. They're having that easily.
Yeah, they gave up. We, of course, had Rachel Reeves crying on the front benches. She may claim it was for personal reasons, but it was quite the spectacle, the drama around simply trying to cut $5 billion off the benefits bill. And so what that was doing was, I believe it was the score you get when you do this PIP form, where you basically score how much your acne or your bedwetting in this case affects your daily life, and then if your score is high enough you'll get the money. And I think they were just trying to slightly reduce the score at which you're or you know, increase the score at which you will qualify for the money. Like, it has to harm your life a little bit more than it would have
so it
otherwise.
Wouldn't be, when they say bedwetting, is that being to anyone who's I can't think of the official word when you can't stop yourself from piddling. Incontinent.
Something like that.
Is that right?
I think so.
Or was that going to France? Anyway, sorry.
No, I think that's correct.
Dad jokes. Yeah, I mean, if you've got a problem where you can't, I mean, you would
go to work in a nappy if you have to.
Well, I mean, they do.
You can
sell
still
them.
go to work. Yeah, go get a tenner lady.
Wouldn't that be something, or a man? Wouldn't that be something that you would have been? You know, you'd either have mostly in older age.
Yeah.
I mean, Little Britain used to do a whole sketch on that, didn't they? Which you could never get away with now. The old, remember that, the lady in the supermarket used to wet herself while having a normal conversation with somebody, and this just incredible puddle, which nobody referred to it. They could never do that on the BBC now.
I know. No, sadly, comedy is dead. But in all seriousness, I mean, there is just no. You're not helping these people if you are just signing them off and saying you don't have to work anymore, here are all these benefits, and making it so that work doesn't really, as an alternative, doesn't really pay in comparison. These are people who, if they are mentally a little bit down about the fact that they've got some issues, like they've got acne that they find embarrassing and painful on their face, or they're feeling a bit anxious, those problems are going to probably be worse if they are just sat at home all day thinking about them. They probably would actually feel a lot better mentally if we gave them a bit of tough love and said, no, we're not going to give you a handout. You've got to go to work. You've got to try. You can speak to your employer, and if they need to, be more adaptive, that you have more bathroom breaks if the case is that you're a bedwetter, then make it happen, but go to work and they'll feel so much better. So the idea that this is helping people...
Would you need to be off work unless you are perpetually peeing? I mean, there's no deliberate alliteration there, but if that is the case, I would imagine there's something else wrong. But wetting the bed doesn't seem like, nobody ever wet the bed and went, I better claim for some pip.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that you do have to question a little bit with the stats that we've got there is when it says this many people have got PIP for acne, is it just acne, or that was something on the side of something
a manifestation of something else?
Of something more serious. It's a little bit hard to know, but I think regardless of what the official figure is of how many people are off work, say, just for anxiety, I think we know that it's going up and up and up, and it's getting easier and easier to get signed off for these things.
Yeah, I'd imagine they're not talking about a teenager that's got acne, which happens to most of us at some point, and then you're going, and I don't think I can work because I've got a spot. I'd imagine it's a bit more than that. Let's just finally do this, Chloe. Interesting BBC, big announcement from the BBC, set to cancel TV shows and channels as it slashes spending by 80 million over the next 2 years. This is the new Director General, Matt Britton, is announcing this £80 million spending cuts across content, news and nations divisions by 2027 to 2028. Around 550 positions will be cut in news and nations divisions. And when they say nations divisions, do they just mean regional TV, I guess? Or radio? Would that be fair? Yeah.
No idea.
I've worked for the BBC at a regional level. And
it's, really?
Yeah. I mean...
Surprised you're not more indoctrinated.
I had to escape. It was done overnight. Nobody noticed. Out the window I went, down a little pulley, and I left with my Arethian robe still on the hook. I mean, it was just, it was extraordinary. The amount of what I can never work out, I think, like, you've got, is it Radio 1 that have got about 6 radio stations associated with Radio 1 or something, that are all sort of offshoots, dance,
probably
one extra.
You just
Brothers extra.
You just do not need
read
that
all
many.
About it, extra,
I think they should maybe aim for quality rather than quantity of channels. I mean, we're just talking here about slashing 80 million. Bear in mind that their revenue is their last figure was 5.9 billion a year, so that's just a tiny amount. They could cut way more than that without it actually affecting the quality of their output at all, because the reality is you don't need anywhere near as many staff as they have for each show there. I mean, when we had all the Bob Vylan Glastonbury controversy, when we were thinking about who's responsible, and I see in the news it says they had over 200 staff just for Glastonbury. I'm like, what? Why do you need that many? If their staff were actually just more productive and learnt to do more with less, they could produce the same quality of output. I mean, I'm sure to, output something like we're doing here, they've probably got 10 times as many staff as we've got.
100%.
At least 10 times.
When I used to do the sort of news review on the BBC News channel some years ago, and I remember turning up there one day, and a researcher met me at the in the reception and said, just before we go up to the newsroom, I need to make a big apology. And I said, what is the apology, Jemima? And she said, well, we're really short of staff. And, you know, it's been a bit of a problem, bit of a tough shift. And I said, OK, well, I work in the industry, so I know what that can look like and feel like. She goes, well, anyway, just get prepared. And we walk into the newsroom. Fiona Bruce is in front of us. She's just done the 10, as they call it in the business. She just read the 10 on a Saturday night. And in we go. And, the doors open. It was like sort of Game of Thrones territory of people there. And I thought, who are all these? And she sort of looked at me and went, see what I mean? It's like, see what, just 500 people sitting in this room. And that's a shortage of stuff. I know they all do sort of slightly different things.
And I think too many cooks spoils the broth.
100%. Yes, and they haven't really learned from that. And they're multifarious radio stations, and they're curious. They've got a couple of TV stations that you wonder about. Why is that even there?
I think it would do them good to have to put out the same output with half the amount of money.
And it can be done.
Yeah.
Listen, Chloe, we hit the clock, but thank you, as ever. Chloe Dobbs with us on the programme. 0344 499 1000. Thoughts on the BBC? We'll take some calls on that. PIP payments, yet again, it's going northwards. And the question we began with, can any party stop the small boat crisis? Your thoughts on that number? Just gone 1:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes from Chris in Derbyshire. It says, this is a reference to immigration. The problem is you've got a mix of people who wish to harm us, people who want to play us for chumps, and people who want a better life. We can't tell what a person's intentions are, and we make no real effort to find out. And I've made this point, which is particularly acute after the war began in Iran. Many wars, of course, but the most recent one, February's bombing raid on Iran from Israel and America. After that all kicked off, you might have thought, bearing in mind a large percentage of people who come over on boats across the Channel are from Iran. At one point, they were making up about 70 or 80%, and still they form one of the biggest collective groups that make the crossing. You might just think that anyone, if they could establish down there in Dover, when this is all kicking off, 700 people come, if they could establish the people that come from Iran, you might say, yeah, we're not just going to let you go in a hotel because we're kind of at war with your country, and we know there's a lot of, pretty nefarious stuff goes on down Tehran way. Some terrible things. A lot of you guys are, subscribe to things that aren't particularly Western friendly. Some of you pathologically hate this country. So until we're not at war with Iran and everything's tickety-boo over there, we're going to keep you detained. There wasn't even that. There was no effort at all to establish that maybe at times of heightened security, petrol going through the roof, all sorts of warnings, additional security on planes and trains and down there in the ports, and yet a complete green light for coming over on a rubber boat, even if you are from a country that we're at war with, who is a #1 exporter of terrorism on the planet. I mean, how many clues would you need? We'll talk to Sebastian Salick in just a second. First, Isabel Oakeshott's Talks International editor is with us. Isabel, I don't know how many column inches you've written on this, how many broadcasts you've done on this subject. We're sort of at a point where we were playing some clips of politicians earlier with their big promises about stopping the boats and smashing the gangs. And it's almost as if we're being played here. It's like a kind of bad joke, because the worse it gets, and this week we've got this 700 number, the biggest number in a single day this year. And yet Keir Starmer will still stand up and say, yep, we're on it, we're sorting this one out. Rishi Sunak used to stay the same. It's a bad joke, if that's what it is, but certainly... How do we take any of these people seriously when we hear the same mantras over and over again, and we have done for over a decade?
Well, we don't take them seriously. We can't take them seriously. Apparently, Keir Starmer has been boasting at the G7 that there are now French riot police helping stop the boats. Well, I've just put on X a little reminder of just how little the French riot police actually do, the French so-called riot police. This was actually a Talk exclusive. We showed the footage of them with their pathetic little plastic shields, literally not willing to get their feet wet, so they just stand on the edge of the water and watch the migrants go. It is an insult to the intelligence of British voters. It is a national security risk on a daily basis. And, you know, all of us sit here thinking, we can't go on like this. And yet we do go on like this. And people feel so frustrated, I think, up and down the country. It's not like we can take the law into our own hands and go and stop this never-ending tidal wave of unidentified people coming to, at best, be totally dependent on the British taxpayer. What are we supposed to do as voters except sort of shout about it? It's really, really frustrating. But I listened to your debate earlier about, you know, can any party do better? And the answer is that if Reform ever got into government, they would just have to. It would just not be tenable for Reform to get into government on this platform and then say, oh, well, actually, it's all too difficult. I know the Reform leadership does not believe it's too difficult. They've got a bunch of ideas, and they're not particularly complicated as to how you stop this happening. And they would have to implement that from basically week one.
Yes, and I think Nigel, Richard, Zia and others would all acknowledge that if they're not able to do it, or they don't do it, it would be people's right to be angry about that, because they put so much into this, talked very logically about it. And I think the point that I also made, Isabel, a little earlier on, you know, when you can tell whether a politician really believes what they're saying. You know, when I hear Keir Starmer talking about immigration, you just think it's not in your DNA, mate. It isn't. It's not really there. Even when, you know, I was watching that Brexit documentary. I don't know if you've seen it in the last couple of weeks. It was a two-parter. Nothing you didn't already know, but it's always vaguely interesting if you're a political junkie and an anorak to sort of relive some of those moments of what happened 10 years ago and the lead up to it. And it was interesting listening to David Cameron, but particularly Boris Johnson, who said, and I believe him, he said, when Nigel Farage started talking about immigration and the EU, he said, I didn't want anything to do with that. He said, it never even occurred to me that it was about immigration. And I believe him. I believe that Boris Johnson's position he hadn't really thought about that element of it. David Cameron, these were sort of that part of the Conservative Party that were very pro-immigration. Boris at one point was going to have some kind of, the name always escapes me, it was certainly going to allow long periods for people to remain.
An amnesty.
An amnesty. That's it. He was going to have an amnesty. Well, we talked about having an amnesty. So when you hear some of those people speak, you think, I don't really believe you. When you hear Reform speak, I don't think anybody, even if they're not a natural supporter of Reform, would doubt that these people have this as part of their inner political philosophy.
Without a doubt. I mean, it was Nigel who, for frankly, years was out on the channel documenting what was happening when no one was that interested. You know, he was exposing this all day, every day, you know, out on the high seas, as it were, with his cameras, with video recording equipment, and forcing it up the political agenda. And that is where it's remained ever since. And you know, when Nigel talks about this stuff, there might be other areas that he's less interested in. Of course there are. All politicians have areas which their heart is in and their heart is less in. But this, his heart really is in. And I think reform looks to what happened in Australia. You know, if you show that you are determined either to turn back boats, or that anyone who comes to your country in this way is immediately detained and deported as soon as reasonably practical, you know, international treaties notwithstanding, then what happens? Well, they stop coming. You know, they may come by other methods, but they sure as hell don't risk coming that way.
Well, indeed, we had
Australia.
Yeah, we had Alexander Downer with us former, of course, foreign minister of Australia, a little while back, and he was making the point, and the bit I hadn't realised at the time of the Australian policy is that not only did people never actually make it to Australia in order to be processed, that even if they were given the green light to remain, they still didn't go to Australia. They went to an Australian territory. So the deterrent was obvious and massive. But we've not tried anything like that, and we have plenty of facilities around us to do something similar.
It was also an awful lot easier for us. I mean, they had an awful lot more sea to worry about than our little channel. You know, I heard you say earlier it's impossible to monitor and police every inch of it, but I'm really not sure it's that difficult. You know, we know where all the key departure points are. With modern drone technology, surveillance is a whole different story as to how it would have been 20 years ago. I simply refuse to believe that this is beyond the technical and physical expertise of our different agencies, let's put it that way. Now, we do know that our Navy is hopelessly depleted. But once again, if our Navy genuinely was willing and put its mind to stopping the boats, of course it can stop the boats. These are just overloaded rubber dinghies.
Well, absolutely. And you know, you don't have to watch much TV. You turn on one of those kind of 9 p.m. Channel 5 programmes called Has Your Dog Gone Missing? And they send a helicopter up there and they can spot a chihuahua in the Shropshire countryside from 300 feet in the air. And you think, you can do that, but you can't spot 700 men in a rubber boat? I'm not believing you.
Yeah, of course not. Of course not. But the point is, the political will just isn't there at the moment. Keir Starmer is not interested in stopping the boats, and that is one of the main reasons why parties on the right are doing so well at the moment. I think you quoted Zach Balansky earlier. I was like,
just for shizzle and giggles.
Just for balance, you know.
It's always worth a look in to see what they're up to. Isabel, great to see you. Thank you for coming on. Isabel Oakeshott Talks international editor. Sebastian Selleck is a political commentator and more of, I think we can fairly say, Sebastian, of the left than the centre or the right. Well, you heard what Isabel said there at the very end. You know, it's not really in the heart of Labour to want to stop it. Keir Starmer keeps saying we will stop it, but no real intention. In fact, truth be known, he quite likes it, doesn't he?
Quite the opposite. The fact of the matter is, this is slowly stopping. You look at the pledges that Labour made on immigration, they're all pointing in the right direction. Bringing down net migration, it was almost 1 million in 2023. Now we're, 171,000 in 2025, an 82% drop.
Yeah, well, that was Conservative policies kicking in.
Conservative policies that Labour maintained, they also increased the threshold, so they went further than where the Tories had gone. The threshold on how much you have to be earning to get a skilled worker visa, reducing reliance on overseas workers. We had a 78% decline in 2 years. Reducing small boat arrivals, what you asked me about originally, that's down 13% on a year.
700 blokes turned up on Monday.
But that's only notable because
710 actually.
Yes, but we're at the lowest level for crossings this year since 2021. This has been a remarkably slow year for small boat crossings.
10,000 people this year alone. Nobody could say that's a success.
It's way less than what we've seen in previous years. You're not going to turn it to zero overnight, but what you are...
But this isn't because Keir Starmer has done something that's made people go, oh, better not get on that boat. Keir Starmer has spoken.
Well, it's a combination of things. It's partly the weather. If you have bad days, they can't come over. But partly we're seeing a move towards the Danish model, where you have a temporary status. You have to renew that every 30 months rather than being on a track towards permanent residence. That is a big disincentive for people to come over.
But it needs to be more than that, Sebastian, doesn't it? We need to have a situation where it's unthinkable that you would just suddenly arrive in somebody's country on a boat. At the moment, it's worth the punt if you're the person trying to get over here, and I don't dispute people who might just have good intentions to change their lives. Even if you said, let's take the best case scenario, immigrant A is a decent chap, family man, wants to work hard, wants to pay tax. Even if that was the case, the fact is we can't facilitate that. And even if people do come on a temporary basis, all the while those people are here, and we don't usually know who they are, which surely must be some kind of national security emergency every day. Even while we don't know who these people are, we are paying to facilitate whatever stay they happen to have. So staying here for 2 years would be seen as a success under your assessment of Labour, and yet we would still pay multi-millions of pounds for those large groups of men to be here.
Well, you say we have to make it unthinkable to come over. I think it already is unthinkable. You and I wouldn't get on a boat and try and cross the channel. We would probably die, as many have. And doesn't that tell you how desperate people are to come over here?
No, it tells me that I live in a hellhole in another part of the world that nobody wants to live in, and I've decided that I'd rather live somewhere else. I mean, if you were that desperate, you'd just live in Spain, wouldn't you? Your first country that you'd stop off at.
Well, I don't think so, because if you're looking to change your life and pick a country you're going to stay in for the rest of your life, you want to think about that very carefully. And if you speak English, as many people do, if you have family here already, those are big reasons to come to Britain rather than to come to Spain. And it's reasons that they're deciding it's worth risking their life for, which shows how important it is to them.
Sebastian, thank you, as ever. Sebastian Salek, he's a Labour political commentator. Thank you to him. He is suggesting there's some success to be seen in Keir Starmer's policies on this. I don't think 710 men on a moody Monday afternoon spells success, frankly, but that's his view. 0344 499 1000. Lines are open on this. Can any party stop the small boats? You see, and there's a deliberate reason for asking this, because when you get into what would have been the basic debate about a year ago, people would have said, well, yeah, reform can. But now we've got people who don't like reform, and they've gone to Restore. I know this is yet to be a party that's really kind of broken through, but they're certainly making a lot of noise, a lot of headlines, and they're penciled in to certainly have a more than respectable result at the up-and-coming by-election tomorrow. So you have all of those factors in place. So now many people are going, actually, it's not Nigel Farage, it's Rupert Lowe. He's the man that can do it. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just a couple of points on disabilities. Suze says, I disagree with you and Chloe. If a person has an eligible disability, then there would be no need to put acne on the form, as they would have already qualified. So the acne will be irrelevant. But it's interesting that acne came out as one of the reasons why people had claimed PIP. I would imagine that would be some kind of debility. I mean, everybody can joke about it. I mentioned tennis elbow, and Mark in Kirkcaldy in Fife says, tennis elbow sufferer here. I would never condone claiming benefits or PIP payments for a sore elbow, but it can be really, really painful. For about 2 years, I struggled to hold things as simple and light as a cup of tea. Thankfully, I'm self-employed and work from home, so I was fine. I'm always aware when you, because it sounds funny, doesn't it? Tennis elbow. There's another one, isn't there, that's got a kind of weird name. Another sort of a frozen shoulder. That's it. It sounds like something hanging up in a butcher's shop. I've got a frozen shoulder. All of these things, they say, oh, he's got tennis, oh, he's all right, it's just like a bit of a pain. Now, I'm aware that if you've got a bad case of any of these things, man alive, you won't be sleeping 8 hours on the trot anytime soon. So I do get that. You do wonder whether the benefit system should be paying you out as a result, though. Matthew's in Warrington. Back to that issue of can any party stop the small boats, Matthew? What do you think? Hi.
Yeah, first one, can you get a picture to ride this tramp?
Sorry, you on a runway?
No, I pulled over on the side of the road.
Oh, right, OK. I thought a jet was about to take off next to you.
No, I think that was a van going too fast.
Oh, okay.
No, I was going to say, could you get a pit for Writer's Cramp? But,
Writer's Cramp, there's another one.
So brain freeze is another.
Brain freeze? Yeah, I have a few of those a day.
No, to be serious, back on to what I was going to say, mate. Reform is the only ones to stop the boats. And first and foremost, I would stop legal aid. So you can't, if you go to rights to appeal, you want a solicitor, you pay for it. If you can afford to pay a gangmaster £2,000 to bring you over on a dinghy, then you can afford to pay for your solicitor's fees and everything.
I do wonder about that, because that doesn't come up often enough, does it really? If somebody is, you don't come over for free, you can be paying, in some examples we've seen, over 3,000 quid. I mean, if you've escaped tyranny, but you've still somehow got £3,000 in your back pocket, then, I would suggest, I'm not trying to be unkind or mischievous to anyone, I'd suggest you come from a place where you know how to look after yourself.
But £3,000 in somewhere like Afghanistan or Sudan or
probably about 38 grand here.
Yeah, so while you could live quite a nice life over there. You could move out of the wherever you're living and whatever. So I don't understand where the incentives and where you get the money from, because most of these people, unless they're riddled with debt and then they're going on the black market, but where on the black market? Because you can only get so many people working in car washes and nail bars.
Yes.
And selling vapes. So I'd like to delve deeper into what's going on behind the scenes. What if they are going into becoming like slave labour? I
think there is. Apparently there is a little bit of that. Some people don't have the money to come across, but they come across because they are then affiliated or hooked up with somebody, and then they work for that person for pretty much nothing. If they refuse to work for that person, the person that facilitated their journey knows where their family live back in wherever it is. So I don't dispute there's probably some pretty dark stuff goes on as well. And I've got a sympathy for those who genuinely just think, I'd like to change my life. I live in a horrible place and I don't want to be there anymore. Listen, on that point, Matthew, I've got to run just because of time. Great call. Thank you for that. We've got some more strange medical things as well. Golfer's elbow. What's the difference? Golfer's tennis? Is that just a composite? Swimmer's shoulder. Jumper's knee, a strain to the tendon connected to the kneecap to the shin bone. Runner's knee, which is different to jumper's knee. I suppose it's the same, but without the jumping. Pitcher's elbow. That's an inner injury to the elbow caused by repetitive throwing motion. Don't throw stuff if you have it. Housemaid's knee. I've heard of that. It's a swelling in the knee caused by prolonged kneeling. What would you be doing to be so prolonged in the kneeling department that you developed housemaid's knee? And tailor's bunion. Did you not know about tailor's bunion? It's a painful bump on the outside of the little toe. Try to put a tight pair of shoes on. Absolute bloody murder, apparently. Alan is in Aberdeen, not talking about Taylor's bunions, but about the issue of immigration. What have you got for us, Alan? Hi.
Yeah, hi, Ian. The pulling out the ECHR, I mean, I like a lot of what Kemi Badenoch's saying, but I don't trust the lunatic she's got sat behind her. Reform, I mean, he's done a lot of flip-flopping. Will it all change, you know, when he's in government? But let's be honest, we could, you know, they could stop this daily invasion overnight if the establishment wanted to. Stop paying for hotels, stop giving the lawyers money for appeals, stop giving them cash, give them food vouchers or, you know, 3 squares a day, start the mass deportation. And I think with the ECHR, I think we're in for a big one later this year where you're going to see a massive change. You know what's going to happen. They're going to back Shamima Begum coming back to Britain. So suddenly you'll see that'll kick it off on the ECHR. Guaranteed.
That's going to be an interesting one. We will certainly watch with interest. Popcorn at the ready on that. Alan, thank you very much indeed for that. Alan in Aberdeen. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. The explosion of PIP claimants continues to go northwards. Over 4 million now. How did we all get so ill that we can't? 4 million. I mean, these are huge numbers and they've never been seen before. A lot of mental health contingent to that group. We all get it, understand it, sympathise with genuine cases, but it does throw up some obvious and inevitable and correct questions. And can any party really stop the small boat crisis? This after a week of record numbers, 710 on Monday alone. That's a record for this year. Lines are open. Let's get the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back to the home of common sense. This is Talk. So, 710 migrants crossed the channel on Monday. That's the record, a record for this year, the highest daily total in 2026, bringing the yearly figure to nearly 10,000 for this year alone. I don't know at what point somebody doesn't acknowledge it. That's quite a large amount of people. 10,000 by anybody's reckoning, that's a lot of people. It also emerges that asylum appeals backlog has tripled to 87,000 cases, with each one taking an average of 67 weeks to solve. You'd think you could do it in half an hour, apparently not. Who can stop this? Is there a political party you genuinely believe will stop the small boat crisis? Our lines are open. We're about to discuss this one in more detail. PIP welfare claims have topped 4 million for the first time, with the bill heading towards 40 billion a year. That's just the PIP contingent, by the way. Claims for conditions apparently like bedwetting, acne and tennis elbow continue to pile up at the taxpayers' expense. We'll speak to our man with the forms in just a few moments. And the Law Commission wants to split murder into 2 degrees, a reform that could see Nottingham killer Valdo Calacane face murder rather than the manslaughter charge that he did get. Though Labour rejected this very same proposal years ago, they're now adopting it. Details to come. 0344 499 1000. And apropos the whole thing about... in fact, I think it's better if I bring James Flanders in early doors on this. James is business affairs editor at The Sun. Good to see you, James.
Good to see you
We
too.
did get... Before we get into the nuts and bolts of the story that you've brilliantly written about as well, and there's some really disturbing stats in there. Obviously, there's always some jump-out headlines of any story, and journalistically, you kind of know, as you're writing them, you think people are going to pick up on bedwetting and tennis elbow.
Yeah.
But it did send us down a bit of a rabbit hole of weird stuff, like frozen shoulders and housemaid's knee. And as Maria Maidstone has pointed out, jogger's nipple.
Wild.
Wild doesn't even cover it, frankly. Jogger's nipple. Is jogger's nipple just your T-shirt rubbing against your nippolata?
I think it's just chafe.
It's
chafe
basic chafe
of the nipple.
Yes.
It's wild. But that's just one of,
Was that on the list?
Dozens of what we would probably call minor ailments.
Yep.
So the big headline figure was 4 million.
Yes.
4 million now are claiming PIP. So PIP, unlike other benefits we're familiar with, like universal credit, PIP, you don't need a fit note for, i.e. a doctor's sick note.
Which is quite weird in itself.
Yeah. So PIP is meant to help with your daily living and mobility costs. So there's 2 components. There's the daily living cost and then the mobility cost. And if you get the enhanced payout for both across the year, you're taking in well over 10 grand a year. So what it's meant to be for is for someone who might have cancer or might have had to have an amputation. Really serious illnesses and disease that really affect your quality of life.
Of course.
To help with transport costs.
Yeah, so your life would tangibly be affected.
Yeah.
So, running for a bus doesn't happen anymore. You've got respiratory problems because of your cancer, or as you say, you've had an amputation. So obvious stuff that no taxpayer minds contributing to.
No, of course not. And but the whole claims process is pretty wild. They've actually brought for you the 50-page claim form.
It is.
And this is done by you as the claimant. There's no doctor's oversight.
And did you have to print that off? I noticed they've got sample not for use on
sample. This is a sample.
As if you're likely to want to sneakily fill one out.
There's about 20 pages at the start explaining how to fill it out.
Right.
And then there's 33 which include questions like, do you struggle to cook your dinner?
20 pages on how to fill it out. I would have thought once you get to the 19th, it should say, if you've got this far, you're not entitled to anything, frankly, if you need to be told that amount of detail to fill a flipping form out.
But then you're scored by each question you answer.
Oh, are you?
So it could be, but you're free to write in the boxes. So you could say, I struggle to make a cup of tea. Yeah, it could be something as basic as that, and you'll get scored on it. But obviously what we've uncovered yesterday is every 3 months the DWP release the claimant figures, but within their systems they collect a whole lot more. So the other big headline figure was there's now more than 500,000 who have mental health issues who are claiming PIP, and they're citing that as the main reason.
Right.
So what's concerning about that is, you know, we've spoken to experts, we've spoken to opposition parties, and there's this argument that it's a shame that these people are having to turn to benefits when actually a lot of this stuff could be helped by the NHS, and whether it's actually a wider issue of not being able to get GP appointments. So that's the mental health side, and then you've got the minor ailments side.
Yes, but just briefly on the mental health side, of course, the problem with that, and I'm not reinventing the wheel by raising this point, of course, is that it's a big old sliding spectrum of where you might be on the, you know, you might be debilitated with bipolar or some other kind of form of mental health. It is possible, because we've sort of recalibrated or re-evaluated what mental health is. So what might have just been general living, bit of mild anxiety.
Yeah.
We've all come to work on certain days with a bit of lead in the pit of our belly, thinking, you know, stuff's a bit rubbish at home, or something's happened, a mate's not talking to you. You know, you're feeling not at your best. Is that a mental health crisis, or is that just anxiety? Because you could fill a form out.
Well, the data is...
And no one's going to question you.
Well, exactly, but also the data is so well split. So when we talk about that headline figure, more than half a million are now claiming for mental health problems, we're not talking about serious mental health. We're not talking about schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, because you can split the figures out to those specific disorders.
Right.
So this is what they would class as mild anxiety, mild depression.
So it's not what you call the big stuff on the spectrum.
No.
But how do you make a claim for that? This is life, isn't it? Life just throws up good days and bad days. And,
of course.
You know, sometimes you might get more of one than the other. It's a bit of a merry-go-round. You know, you're not always in the same position.
Yeah, of course. And then we have over nearly 330,000 people claiming for the mild ailments we were talking about. So non-specific back pain, 52,000 claims. Gout, 2,800 claims.
Didn't people start having gout in 1812?
They called it the Henry VIII disease. I think you get it from...
That's how far back you got to go.
From gluttony, essentially.
Yes.
And then you've got, you know, IBS, constipation, hemorrhoids, all things which could be treated or managed by your GP. But what the DWP like to counter with these stats is that some people might have more than one of these conditions.
Yes.
But to declare these types of conditions is quite questionable.
So you could be the aforementioned amputee who has hemorrhoids?
Of course.
So, but you would have to put the hemorrhoids on your form?
Yes, but you can also split out who's got more than one.
Right, I see.
So that's how it is. And, you know, all of these claims, they're all soaring. Since April 2019, we've had a look all the way back to then, they're all on a line going up.
So where does this go? Because it's a live subject. Politicians are kind of regularly questioned about it. We know the entire welfare system is completely unsustainable. We also know that the last time, a year ago, when Labour tried to do something, in fact, they didn't even talk about slashing welfare. They just talked about arresting the rate of increase, as I remember. Backbenchers absolutely lost their mind on this thing. It's worth having a little listen to Keir Starmer. When you hear him here, he sounds like a very determined man indeed. Let's have a listen.
On the question of welfare reform, we're committed to reforming our welfare system. It doesn't work. It traps people. And it has to be reformed. And it also has to ensure that we've got a welfare system that is fit for the future. And that is why there will be a vote, and we will press ahead with the reforms. Thank you.
That was June 25th last year, so pretty much exactly bar a week a year ago.
Yeah.
Have you seen the reforms anywhere? 6
months later, the same government decided to reverse the two-child benefit cap.
Yep.
So none of it's really believable, I'd argue.
This is sort of Alice in Wonderland, upside down, Hall of Mirrors, kind of Charlie Brooker kind of existence.
Yeah, and then every April, the payment amounts you get go up with inflation.
Yep.
And case numbers are just soaring.
What are the government telling you, James? You speak to people in these departments. I mean, other than the sort of classic pre-prepared press release of And we just heard it there from the man himself. He's the Prime Minister going, no, we're on it, we're sorting it. And it's like, well, there's quite literally, I'm not trying to make a political point here, I genuinely, journalistically, as a human being, cannot see any evidence of that.
Yeah, I mean, well, they just parrot the same line. They talk about how caseload increases are slowing, but it doesn't mean they're not still growing. They also go back to, as you mentioned earlier, PIP was going to be overhauled originally to save about £5 billion quid for the Treasury, but that didn't work out because of the backbench rebellion. And what that would have done is it would have made it much harder to have claimed PIP. But what they did is they backtracked on it and they launched this thing called the Timms Review, which is going to look at more ways in which they can bring the bill down.
This is Stephen Timms, the pensions minister.
But there's nothing to it. I mean, they talk about an extra 16.1 billion NHS mental health investment, but PIP claims for mental health are still going up, so that's clearly not touching the sides.
But I think most people, I probably speak to most people, I said it to you at the beginning of this, that I want to give help. I want to give more help to people who are disabled. I genuinely want people who've got disabilities and long-term illnesses. I want to help those people. Also, as a taxpayer, I'm entitled to be a little bit cynical about the very sort of generalised, casual way this is done. The fact that it doesn't require a doctor's note. You can fill a form out online, press send, and then just keep your fingers crossed, and there's a good old chance somebody's going to go, yep, you qualify, and you could still be in work, you could be anything, right? I mean, there's all sorts of factors there.
And the application system as a whole is frightening, because since we published the article yesterday afternoon on thesun.co.uk, we've had lots of readers email in, readers with things like terminal cancer, another reader who has renal failure and their kidneys are only working at 10%, and they've all claimed that they haven't qualified.
So you have the other side of the story. So you have the
other side of the story, where people who you'd have thought would meet the criteria for this and for the enhanced payments, but they're not even getting a penny.
I mean, that's extraordinary in itself.
Yeah.
Is there every sort of wannabe government, the Conservatives, Reform and the like, will say, you know, we'll sort this out? It's very... I don't want to underestimate the hard work that opposition politicians do of whatever party, but it's very easy, isn't it, to be in opposition, to go, yeah, we'll sort this out and we'll bring it down. And then, of course, you're taken into a room by a head civil servant, not part of the mischievous blob, just a very real person, says, well, I tell you what you can do, you can get rid of all those payments, but now they're out there, you're going to end up with a massive problem. You're going to have a huge issue on your hand, because the only thing worse than somebody with perhaps an overinflated benefit check is the same person without a benefit check, because that's a bigger problem for the country than actually giving the money to someone. They're the kind of arguments.
Yeah, and then there's also the cost argument of staffing and the resources it would take to, you know, introduce more face-to-face assessments, for example. There's no easy winning, I don't think, on this.
No, because that would take... I mean, you'd have to firstly employ thousands more people to do that.
Exactly.
So this is arguably the quicker way, and probably the guilty secret is that this is cheaper than the alternative.
Yes, and it's also not means tested.
Yeah.
So your income doesn't matter. Whereas with universal credit, your income does matter. But I mean, the other figures that are concerning is, you know, if the rate of increase on number of people who are claiming PIP continues, by 2040, PIP on its own will cost the taxpayer £40 billion a year.
Blimey.
We also revealed last week, off the back of the NEET statistics, those who are not in education, employment or training, and there's now over 1 million age 16 to 24, the bill for that age group will hit £9 billion a year by 2040.
Blimey.
Yeah.
So this word unsustainable, you sort of wonder... and it's funny, because the older you get and the more experience you have of life, and in our case in journalism, etc., you kind of sort of get used to weirdness and strangeness and bluster from politicians and the like. But this word, you know, it's unsustainable. I mean, it literally is unsustainable. That's not. There's no hyperbole there. It's not a political point. It's just a basic fact. at these rates, so the overall welfare bill, which is what, about 330 billion. I know people always go, yeah, but most of that is in pensions, and about 170 billion in pensions, whatever it is. That still leaves, and that's the whole pension debate is another debate in itself, of course. Triple lock and goodness knows what else. But the rest of it, the idea that that will just continue to rise.
Yeah,
at these kind of rates.
Yeah, of course, and the Conservative Party yesterday made a very good point when we're talking about defence spending at the moment.
Yeah.
They make the point, how are we going to do that when we're paying so much towards welfare?
Yeah. And it's not unreasonable to make that contrast.
No, of course not.
We had this from, we were talking about those interesting ailments. Alison in South Wales had housemaid's knee on her elbow due to playing on the floor with my twin boys when they were small, she says. Now, that makes Alison in South Wales a medical peculiarity, frankly. She probably shouldn't even be listening to stuff like this.
No.
Housemaid's knee on your elbow. It's a disgrace. Margaret says, have you ever heard of Starmeritis? Started in July 2024, and we're all suffering from it. Fair point,
quite
really,
good,
isn't it? Listen, James, great to have you on with us. Thank you. We will speak again. James Flanders is Business Affairs Editor over there at The Sun. Your thoughts on all of this, because it's wildly out of control. There's no doubt about that. And sympathies all round to genuine cases. But equally, you are entitled as a taxpayer, and someone gets out of bed in the morning and goes to work, to wonder where your money goes. And if you see iffy and strange lists of things that you couldn't possibly have believed half an hour ago somebody could claim real money for, you've got the right to be a bit grumpy about it. Your thoughts on this? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Violence on the streets, there's no excuse for that, and if there are protests following this, I just hope that they remain non-violent. I mean, you can understand the community concerns after an attack like that.
People were saying all around the world, that's what British people now think. Have a listen to Rob from yesterday.
Morning, Jez. Well, yes, rightly, you shouldn't condone what happened. What else have people got to do? The political class are not listening. These people who are coming over here illegally, they're rapists, terrorists. They're coming over here, literally like putting a wall in a sheep field.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. This comes from Eric, who says the boats will stop if there's will stop if there's no... Should I say won't stop if there's no incentive? Will stop if there's no incentive, I see, sorry. If we stop handing out money, phones, accommodation is a Spartan hut in the middle of nowhere with 3 very basic meals a day, and until it's established exactly who you are, where you're from. Regardless of the excuse given for leaving their own country of origin, it won't have been an issue in France, so they can go back there, put them on a landing craft, disgorge them on a French beach, let the French complain, but my answer would be if they manned their land borders like scrap Schengen, they wouldn't have this problem. Look at Poland. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how, I mean, Poland are, I mean, they still have immigration issues, and of course, and as do Hungary as well, but they have a very different approach, despite being part of the EU and all, because we're always told, well, you know, the EU can't do anything to stop people coming here, and if we were still in it, we could send people back. That's the idea that we could send 10,000 people back this year, if we were still in the EU, is not true. You might send maybe 20 of the 10,000 might have gone back after previous arrangements. I don't think it's too much to ask. And do you know what? If I'd... Look, I know it's very easy to say, well, if I was somebody who'd escaped a war-torn country, this is what I would do. Look, I know when you're in that position, if let's accept a true-life, authentic case of somebody leaving their own land to come to the UK. Now, we can question as to whether if you've come from a North African country, then your first port of call would obviously be, depending on which part of North Africa, it's going to be Spain, it's going to be Italy, it's going to be that neck of the woods, right? I would have thought that if it was about life or death, you would simply be so happy to be in a safe first world country where somebody at least was going to stop you from being killed, if nothing else, and give you a bit of grub on the way. If it was me and my family, I think I would be more than grateful for that to be the case. But more than that, if somebody said, well, you've really got to prove that you're, you know, X, Y, and Z, I would be only too happy to... wouldn't you? Doesn't that go with the territory? Isn't that human instinct? I'm going to literally go to another part of the world and turn up in a country. I'd give them everything they asked for. You can have every bit of paperwork, and even if I've escaped my house because it was on fire by a brutal dictatorship, I'd have something. I would do everything. I would bend over backwards. You could have as much as you asked for because you're about to give me some sanctuary. Isn't that the way you think it would work? I would have thought it would be something like that. This one in from Graham. Ian, I'm getting back to work now. The trouble with this great land is that it's being run by people who have too much of the wrong education, i.e. university. That's absolutely bang on. They also have too much of kind of groupthink where they just sit and join in with fixed templates on how you deal with stuff, and they inherit it, even from different parties. So the Labour Party come in. I bet you not much has changed in the civil service between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. I bet it's all remarkably the same systems in place. And they like it like that. They love a spreadsheet. They love a flip chart. They love a nice, neat database of stuff that they can point to, cite and quote. And it seems to sort of function on that. You know, there's no grit there. There's no real kind of sense of human activity that is behind the scenes, you know, shaking it up and making stuff happen and employing logic. Let's just run with the template, sir. It's how it's always worked, Minister. Don't mess with it. Jackie is down there in Essex. How you doing, Jackie?
Good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon to you. Fire away. What have you got for us?
Yeah, I'm on PIP. I've been on PIP for 9 years.
Yep.
And I'm a dialysis patient.
OK.
And it takes a lot out of me to be on dialysis. But some of the things I've been hearing today, I just think, how ridiculous. I mean, I had to fight hard to get PIP. They turned me down once and I had to fight hard again for the second time. But the things I'm hearing today, I just can't understand. First of all, it was how far you could walk, which you got PIP for mostly.
Yes, and didn't you have to physically show that?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been to, like, the offices and they've looked at me and see how far I could walk, go up the stairs, and it's just hard. But today, I don't know how these people are getting PIP. for the things that have been coming out. I mean, I can understand if you're genuine, you know, don't get me wrong. But for some things I've heard today, I just think it's ridiculous.
I mean, we all want to
How
help
they get
somebody.
away.
We all want to help somebody who's
course.
genuine. You know, that's part of
Yeah,
the
of
deal
course.
of, you know, living
Yeah.
in the kind of world we live in. That's why we have a welfare system. I'm proud we have a welfare system.
Me
I just
too.
don't want to waste lots of money on
Money.
unnecessary. And even when it
Yeah.
comes to mental health, and that's so tricky because you can't really
Yeah.
tell someone you haven't got a mental health crisis. But, you know, the
Yeah.
smart money says, you know, there's a lot of... We kind of reinvented what mental health is.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I mean,
anxiety, and I know anxiety can be, you know, a fairly choking affair in its worst forms, but, you know, lots of people feel the pinch and feel a bit low from time to time. That's just the way life is, isn't it?
Of course, yeah, but I mean, I get it every day. I mean, I'm like it every day. I mean, I have to go to dialysis today. I'm there for 5.5 hours.
Blimey.
You know, and it's a long day.
Of course
but it also does lots of things to your body. You know, and it affects your mental health.
So yes, so while it's fixing one thing, there's other sort of elements that
That's
you've got to
right,
keep your eye on, right?
That's right. Yeah, lots of things. But I just don't know how people are getting away with it with silly things these days.
I hear
know,
you.
It's just
I hear
ridiculous.
you. Jackie, thank you very much indeed for that, and I wish you luck with everything, certainly in terms of your treatment as well. Wayne says, I was about to read out Nick Lawton's message, but I can't read that out because we'd have Ofcom complaints. But it's very funny. Wayne says, the stories about Pip are disingenuous. It's incredibly hard to get, requires a lot of... should that be medical letters? Disabled people can work, but not as much sometimes. This needs help sometimes. I get confused with other benefits, says Wayne. And unfortunately, I think there was more to that message, but it's gone. A lot of people mentioning jogger's nipple, tennis testes. Have you heard of tennis testes? I think it is a thing, right? I do wonder why... every now and again, a woman will go, well, there's a new bra that's really good for when you jog because it's got more support on it. And that makes perfect sense. Why would that not be helpful if you're jogging? Naturally, there's going to be some effect for some women on their booberinos, right? That's going to be the case. That's the official medical term. But what about the men and the testicle? I mean, if you start running and your little pendulous collection of doom is going up and down, then I don't think it's unreasonable. So I'm sure, you must be able to get to... Did we talk about this once? I'm sure we did in the office, about PAT. I mean, is there not an equivalent? I mean, women almost... They sold as sports bras, aren't they? For literally that reason, not just for running, but doing all sorts of sport so that you've got a bit of protection in that department. That makes perfect sense. Well, what about the blokes? A little testicle, little marbles. I mean, they're just waving around all over the place, bobbing along as if they're sort of indestructible things. I mean, some are made of steel, I get that, but come on. Have some sympathy for the testes. This one comes from Alison. Oh, no, Alison was the one I read who had housemaid's knee on her elbow. Is that not just housemaid's elbow? I don't know. Is that not... Or would you not be... I mean, why is it always the housemaid? Never the butler. It's like Cluedo, this, isn't it? I do remember, Alison, though, on that point of going to the doctors when my first little boy was, not just after it straight away, but when he was about sort of 1 and having quite a lot of back issues. And the doctor saying, I must have told him that we had a baby quite recently, and he said, well, that's it, really. He said, when you have a kid, your back, your body does like the weirdest... I'm putting a kid in a car, in the car seat. You know, you got one arm with the shopping, you're trying to put the child in. Your back is putting a child to bed or in the cot. These are all unnatural movements for the human body. And you find yourself... And then when they get to... Like my 7-year-old can fall asleep on a sofa. Have you ever tried to carry a 7-year-old up the stairs and into bed? I mean, it's the most... When you think about it, you shouldn't do it. It's ridiculous. I should just wake him up and go, get up. You think I'm doing that? But you don't. You give it a go. And they are so heavy because they're kind of dead weight. And then you've got to manoeuvre through the landing and open the door with your elbow and then lift the sheets up to get them under the bed. It's no surprise that poor Alison got herself a dose of housemaid's knee, even if she did get it on the elbow. 0344 499 1000. A lot more where this came from. The leading question this afternoon, which party can actually stop the small boat crisis? The smart money would go, well, reform. Reform will do it. They've said it. But, of course, those that don't like reform, that went to Restore, will go, no. Reform can't do it. They'll be like the Tories. Only Restore can do it. The Green Party think they've got the better plan, whatever that may be. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Filth. Let's go to Ant in Hull, who says the UK needs a deterrent with regards to illegal migration, perhaps sending them to a UK territory like the Falklands. That alone would see numbers drop dramatically. Well, that is exactly what the Australian system did. They very cleverly just said, right, OK, if you claim asylum, if you want to claim asylum, you have to come to this, I can't remember the name of the specific island. You come to this island, so you don't actually go to Australia, and we'll decide from there whether you're legit. And the ones that aren't get sent back to the country of origin. The ones that are don't get to go to Australia. They get to go to Australian territory. So they never actually make it to mainland Australia. They go to another island off Australia. So Australia have fulfilled, if you like, an ethical obligation to assist somebody who needs to claim asylum, but they're not going to be mooching around the streets of Melbourne or Sydney anytime soon. So that's how they've worked it out, and some people clearly have the same belief that we could do that here. And we have got quite a lot of islands and chunks of sort of offshore land and the likes. You might think somebody would give that a go. 0344 499 1000. Now, what about this? Just gone 2:30, by the way. The I Stand With British Jews is a non-political, non-profit campaign giving ordinary Brits the opportunity to stand up for Jewish neighbours who've experienced a dramatic rise in hate crimes, particularly since October 7th. Those attacks in 2023. They're asking everyone to wear their badge tomorrow, which is the Jewish day of mourning, known as Tisha B'Av. Let's speak with Rory Hanrahan, journalist and political commentator, creator of the campaign. Rory, nice to have you with us. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Listen, I mean, this is... to me, this just sounds like common sense stuff. I think most, clearly not all, most of the British public would say, absolutely, I would endorse that. But it's sad, really, isn't it, that we have to even discuss the plight, as it were, and a kind of treatment of Jews, not just in this country, but we're talking about this country at the moment. We're talking about Jews and the plight of Jews in a way that was never penciled in to be talked about in 2026. The chronology has gone wrong.
Yeah, very much so. Just one minor thing. It's the 23rd of July. Sorry, I hate to correct people, but that's got lost in translation somewhere. So
not a problem.
So apologies about that. You know, I suppose you know what really kills me about this is that there was a period of time in the 90s when we had this about right. No one really cared. I didn't care where you were, what you looked like, what toilet you wanted to use, who you wanted to go home with. You know, I mean, it just didn't matter to me. I was interested in you. You know, I was interested in people for the real diversity, which is diversity of your mind. And the fact that in 2026, 117 hate attacks against Jewish people out of every 10,000 in the country.
Yeah.
The next one is something like 82. There's not even a comparison. And these are the best citizens you could find in any country. I mean, you won't have known you've ever met a British Jew. Most people never have. And when you look at the lists from, you know, everyone from, you know, the inventor of penicillin to the 60,000 Jews that fought in the Second World War, dozens of Victoria Cross winners, you know, Marks and Spencer's, employers, the best citizens of the country. And they're getting spat on the streets and attacked. You know,
what made you, what prompted you, if you like, I mean, it's maybe an obvious question, to come up with this campaign, I Stand With British Jews?
Well, it was about a year ago, actually, and I was in a pub. I run in Oxfordshire for somebody, and I run a couple there in nice village pubs. You should come down and have a pint sometime, and you'd love it there.
Sounds beautiful.
It is 500-year-old village green. What more could you want?
Yeah,
No,
you wouldn't get rid of me, Rory.
No, that would be the problem. We might have to start charging you rent. It was a particularly quiet lunchtime. I happened to be working on the bar, and there was a lady in, and she was clearly a tourist. You know, we're about 10 minutes from Oxford City Centre. You get quite a lot of tourists come out to see a little bit of the old England. And she came up to pay at the bar. She's finished. For some bizarre reason, I thought she was Dutch. Her accent, God knows why. I'm not very good at accents, clearly. And she looked at me with this sudden panic look on her face, and her voice dropped to about 2 decibels. She said, "No, I'm Jewish. I'm from Israel." And she looked at me like she thought I was going to leap the counter and beat her to death. You know?
Wow.
And I sort of went, "That's fine. You know, you're okay." And we ended up having this long conversation, very quiet lunchtime. And the tap room can be quite a nice place to chat. And she'd been in England the year before the conference at Oxford, had been treated terribly by very smug, middle-class, pseudo-intellectual types, you know, with double firsts in media studies, you know, this sort of kind of fakeanista types. And her and her husband, she wasn't going to go this last year. And her husband said, "No, you should do it. You do it. Go and stand up to these buggers. Don't let them do this to you." And it stuck with me. And I ended up writing an article for The Spectator about it. It was quite a long article. It was a very good article, I thought, in the end, you know. It took a lot of work, and it meant a lot to me. And since then, I've just watched, or I think most of us have watched, every week, people who wouldn't know where certain countries were on a map out saying the most terrible, stupid, ridiculous things in huge numbers. And a slow decline in what was very English, a sense of fair play. I'm not interested in the politics of where you're from. They belong where you're from. You're British, you've been here for 400 years, you get the exact same rights as you do and as I do in this country, and that's the bloody end of it.
Yeah, and it is...
It's up to us to enforce this, that's the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know lots of people talk about it. I always quote the David Baddiel book, Jews Don't Count, because it kind of does sit very much in this category of a whole group of people who, for some reason, are treated differently when it comes to racism, when it comes to people making generalised, snipey, nasty, horrible anti-Semitic comments. It's sort of like, well, they're Jews, so it doesn't really matter. It's not the same thing as any other. I don't know how anybody has ever, with a straight face, said these arguments out loud, but they do. They really do tend to think that. I've had it where people have got in touch with us, Rory. I've talked about things that we're talking about now. And I'll get a message saying, "Why are you protecting the Jews? They don't need any... They don't need any help." Like it's this one group of sort of privileged people that have never experienced anything. And yet, you know, given the history, that's a rather extraordinary claim for anyone to make.
And the thing is, most British Jews are very liberal. They're very left-wing. You know, they tend to be quite what you would call, that awful word I hate, progressive. You know, this is not a particularly conservative-leaning group of people, you know, and would have been to the forefront of most of the sort of racial stuff during the 60s and 70s. And yet somehow they've bought themselves a status, God knows how, that means that every time things go wrong, they're the first people we always go back to pick on and to hate. You know, is it because they're small groups, they're vulnerable? It's the bully stuff, isn't it? It's the classic bully stuff, you know? And ordinary people need the opportunity to be able to stand up and go, "Do you know, I know this thing's not right about this. feel it in my bones. I don't know what it is, and I don't know what I can do. Well, a very simple thing you can do is slap a badge on your chest on your way to work or in the pub afterwards, and it will take a particularly bad and poison type of brain to have a problem with a Union Jack and I stand with British Jews.
Yeah. Spot on.
If you've got a problem with that, then we need to have a real conversation about what your problem is, because there's something much more deeper going on there at that point. And I think it puts the argument back onto them rather than on us.
You're absolutely spot on. Where can people get that badge? Tell us that if you could, Rory. Is there a website as well? People can get some more information.
I stand with British Jews. If you just put it into Google, it'll come straight up as a Shopify site and it'll be delivered straight to your door. 3 to 5 working days. I've set the website up, so please don't be too cruel about it. I'm not exactly au fait with technology, but I've somehow managed to do it because we don't want to spend any money. We want this all just to go back into a couple of charities afterwards. So everything's going straight back into it. That's the whole idea. So I'm doing it myself completely. So bear with me. I'm not exactly a techno guy.
I don't think anyone's going to criticise you for that. It's brilliant what you're doing. Rory, thank you for coming on with us. Listen, good luck with the campaign. I hope loads of people get involved in this. Rory Hanrahan, journalist and political commentator. I stand with British Jews. As he said, it's a My Shopify site, but if you just put that into Google, I stand with British Jews, it will come up. Click on it, and that's where you can get a badge and do so. Wear it with pride as well, because I think this has become for such a tiny percentage of the population, the amount of abuse going in that direction is absolutely off the scale. And I find it extraordinary for so many reasons, like any form of abuse because of somebody's, religion or colour or difference, etc. Is, it's such a waste of everything, really, isn't it? It's vile, it's nasty, it's bullying, all of that's a given. But it's such a waste. It's a waste of your energy. It really is. And what becomes, to me, with Jews in this country is most extraordinary is that being an integrated Jew, if that is the right way to put it, and I say that because now, obviously, generations of Jewish, I work with lots of Jewish people and, they've only ever lived here. But when I say integrated, I'm talking about how you can be from a different religion, where there are some cultural differences, but a lot of assimilation. If you ever wanted an example of a minority group assimilating into a country, unnoticed, productive, part of the system, part of the furniture, as it were, then it's British Jews. I'd put Sikhs in that group as well. I know there's been some unpleasant, and rightly so, headlines in one area lately in that, but I think Sikhs have done remarkably well in terms of integration. Nobody noticed. Of course, some people, if they are visually of a different belief system, have had some jip. I get it. Jews, Sikhs would share that as well, as would other faiths. The mark out for me of Jews is they've done it brilliantly. And if you think about recent history, when you've come post-war from the Holocaust, the greatest human catastrophe, arguably of all time, and all that was behind it and went with it. To come from that, and we still live in a world, remember, where some people are still alive who were in that Holocaust, the people that were there at the time as kids, who lost parents and grandparents. So to come from that and get on with it is kind of like just getting on with it is good enough, but to come from that and get on with it and assimilate and be part of the system is remarkable. It should be taught in schools as the best example anywhere ever of what cultural, religious assimilation looks like and how it can work. So go to that website, I Stand With British Jews, and get the badge, find out for yourself. Happens in July that day. It's a non-political, non-profit campaign giving ordinary Brits the opportunity to stand up for their Jewish neighbours. Let's go back to your calls. This will be Gary in West Yorkshire. What have you got for us, Gary? Good afternoon.
Hello there. Well, just before I start, by the way, when I did go to school many, many moons ago, we did learn about the Jews, and I totally agree with you. So I can't believe that nowadays nobody seems to be understood. No. Anyway, we were on about the PIP not so long ago.
Yes.
And what it is I've worked since I was 16 years of age for 44 years. Never went to a job centre. Okay?
Yep.
And then last year I had a slight accident where I pulled out my nerves out my spine. Now, I carried on and I was sort of sick for over 6 months, and I was using my own money. In January this year, I finally went to a job centre to sign on, as the saying goes. And I get, because I've got my own property, so no mortgage, because I've got I had some money, £400 every calendar month, that's all I'm allowed on universal credit. Now then, they actively encourage me to go and apply for PIP, so I'm allowed more money. Now, you also mentioned like silly little things like, I think it was the guy said, accumulation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, because, I mean, when I was 13, my big toe hurt, right? Didn't think out of it, just carried on. And this carried on all the way through my life. And it was in my 50s when it finally exploded. And it was gout, which, as you probably know, is uric acid. And yes, with certain medication, Alipure and all that, it is helped along. But that's just like one. And I've worked through that. And So basically, I've had 4 other things I've worked through. I'm not going to go into all my medical history. But this one was the straw that brought the camel's back. But the thing is, when you're on your show like this, and I understand, and I love your show, it's just that I agree a lot of it's wrong, but it does come across sometimes as anybody that's applying lately for PIP, or anybody that's applying for PIP are basically scroungers. I've paid 44 years into this,
No, I get it. Is it not, Gary, just to interject, I mean, I do keep saying as often as I can, most people are quite not just happy, but proud to pay into a system that helps people that need assistance. I think that's a given. But you simultaneously have to be kind of curious to not question how we could have such, and particularly in the mental health strain. In fact, we're not talking about necessarily severe mental health conditions. It could be a form of anxiety. I know that can be crippling in its worst forms. I get that as well. But yeah, to not question it would also be daft, right? Because there is an increase, and the increase is about to increase again.
Well, you said anxiety. You imagine, so you've worked like me. I've worked worked all my life. Then you've always provided for yourself or for your family. That. Now, when you can't provide, that does cause anxiety. Of course it does. You know what I mean? But there is times when, you wake up in the morning and, you think, what the hell? And not being able to work as normal or work to what you've been able to work with all your life, the jobs you've been able to do. It's like saying, well, you retrain. It's easy when you're in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s. Try it when you're in your 60s. You want to retrain at that age? So it is tricky. And all I'm just trying to put across is there is some people that do go for PIP. But not just that. I was actively encouraged by the job centre.
Got it.
Know what I mean?
But again, you're somebody who clearly needs help, and I think one of the suggestions is that it's easier, might be very expensive, but it's actually easier for the government to refer somebody to PIP. Go online, get it sorted out. Not everybody, gets what they want, but it's easier for them to do that than it is to set up a face-to-face system right across the country, involving probably thousands of people, assessors, who'd have to try and make it work. That is a greater problem than the current situation.
I agree with you. As I say, it's the first time I've ever had to deal with it this way. Because obviously I've never dealt with it in my life. And it is weird. It is strange. And it really is. I tell you what does get me, if anything. While I was at the job centre, here's this one. It was just slightly changing a little bit here, but I saw lots of young ones. And they're there, and I thought, why? You know what I mean? Because surely if you're young, there's always jobs.
Yeah.
There's always... I'm not bothered if it's not the job you want right now. But there's always work out there. And I thought, how can you be in your 20s and say, no, there's no work out there for me? There's lots of work out there for you. And if I worked all my life, I mean, most people, a lot of people can work, but why are they allowing this?
I hear you. Listen, Gary, I wish you loads of luck with it all, and I hope fortunes turn again, because life does that crazy stuff of you think, am I going to be on this path forever? I really do. Thank you for your call, sir. Gary in West Yorkshire, 0344 499 1000. Amongst other things, we've got day 2 of the brand new Voice of Doom. Is it doable? Possibly. Will we get an answer today? Maybe. Find out after this.
Violence on the streets, there's no excuse for that, and if there are protests following this, I just hope that they remain non-violent. I mean, you can understand the community concerns after an attack like that.
People were saying all around the world, that's what British people now think. Have a listen to Rob from yesterday.
Morning, Jez. Well, yes, rightly, you shouldn't condone what happened. What else have people got to do? The political class are not listening. These people who are coming over here illegally, they're rapists, terrorists. They're coming over here, it's literally like putting a wolf in a sheep field.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's go for this one from Ant in Harlow. Says the UK needs a deterrent with regards illegal immigration, perhaps sending people to UK territory like the Falklands. Did I read this one out before? But also see the numbers drop dramatically. Yes, I did, didn't I? Because I mentioned the Australian example. Happy to do it again. And thank you very much indeed for that. Chris in Derbyshire, the problem is you've got a mix of people who wish to harm us, people who want to play us for chumps and people who want a better life. We can't tell what a person's intentions are, and we make no real effort to find out, says Chris. I think I also read that one earlier, but, you know, again, these are all... We have got more than 2 texts. I'm just going to keep reading the same 2 out throughout the show. And this one comes from a big fan of the show who says, Ian, what happened to Smash the Gangs? Are the boat migrants being questioned about who organised their trips, etc.? But isn't there somebody... Is it called piloting a boat? I think it actually is. Isn't there somebody who does that? Like when it arrives, isn't there sort of a head honcho on the boat that made it all happen? It doesn't just float. I mean, it's kind of, at some level, propelled over water to get here. Who's that person? Before we talk to Lee, we've got the Voice of Doom. Right, Voice of Doom is a mystery voice, for those who don't know. It's always a politician or a political person. Young, old, left-wing, right-wing, dead or alive, it's a very simple task. Who is this?
Any of the noble aspirations.
Let's hear that again.
Any of the noble aspirations.
There's only one way to get in touch on this, 87222. This is going to be one of those voices that carries on, well, it either goes today like that or it carries on for about 20 years. Our record is, I think, 23 days, is that right? 21 days. 21 was the longest one. But we haven't had one like that for a while. So if you think you know who this is...
Any of the noble aspirations.
87222, and if we do get a right answer, we will reveal all after the news. If we don't, it rolls over to tomorrow. 87222, if you think you can identify this voice.
Any of the noble aspirations.
That's all you're getting. Lee is in Norfolk on PIP. Lee, what have you got for us? Hi.
Afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
I don't understand how it's so easy to get PIP when I've suffered from serious to mild depression for probably nearly 40 years. I've worked right away through it, often until probably the last 2-3 years, sort of 12, 13-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week, behind the wheel of a lorry.
Wow.
Some days you struggle to get out of bed in the morning because you just don't want to.
Yeah, got it.
And then sometimes you go to bed hoping that you don't wake up.
Yep.
But there's no help at all. The NHS isn't geared up to help you. The waiting list is 3 years.
I mean, that by definition of an illness, physical, mental or otherwise, I mean, if you're in that place, the darkest and the lowest, then you haven't got 3 years, have you? You don't even need to be a doctor to know that.
No, and the first thing they say to you is, do you want me to sign you off work? And I've always said no, because it's going to work. It's probably peaked me.
Yeah. So working saved you?
Yeah, pretty well, yeah. I mean, at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. It probably nearly killed me as well. But
how are you doing now, Lee?
I'm okay. I've removed myself from the situation of London.
Yeah.
And also...
Listen, I think your phone line has slightly got the better of us at the end there, Lee, but you got most of that out. I'm really grateful. I wish you well and lots of success in going upwards even further. But it sounds like you've been there in that place where the pit that you can't quite get yourself out of. 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom, who is this?
Any of the noble aspirations.
87222.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. Welcome back to the home of common sense. What are we talking about here this afternoon? 710 migrants crossed the channel in a single day this week, the highest daily total of 2026. That brings the yearly figure to nearly 10,000 so far. As it emerges, asylum appeals backlogs have tripled to 87,000 cases. Everything's in the tens of thousands here. Each case, by the way, to tackle an asylum case, a file of one person, takes an average of 67 weeks to resolve. I'm calling that out. I reckon I could go to the government. I'll do it for half the price. I'll have this done. I'll do a person a day. And the jobs are good. How do we stop this? Can any one party stop the small boat crisis? We'll have more on that. Also, as you've been hearing, PIP welfare claims have topped 4 million for the first time, with the bill heading towards 40 billion a year. That's the direction of travel, and there is no sign of this one going in reverse. Claims for conditions including bedwetting, acne and tennis elbow continue to pile up at the taxpayer's expense. If you're a genuine case, everybody has sympathy and wants to help. If you're not, taxpayers get rather grumpy. And the Law Commission wants to split murder into 2 degrees, a reform that could have seen the Nottingham killer Valdo Callicane face murder rather than manslaughter. Labour actually rejected this proposal some years ago, and now it appears endorsing it. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. We'll go back to more of your calls and comments in a few moments. But first, as I mentioned there, Britain's murder laws could be about to change if the Law Commission, their proposal on scrapping the current system entirely and replacing it with first-degree murder, second-degree murder and manslaughter. This would be the biggest overhaul of homicide law in generations. Let's speak to Wendy Joseph, KC, former criminal judge at the Old Bailey. Wendy, good afternoon to you. Nice to see you again. When you were presiding over a murder case, as an obvious example, I know you did this many, many times, was it ever apparent to you that we were short of a category, or maybe 2? What was your overview as a seasoned lawyer and a judge in this case?
Well, as a lawyer and as a judge, I didn't think we were short of anything. But as a way of explaining what we have got to the public and indeed to defendants, I think we were pretty short of something. And the purpose of all of this is to clarify the situation. Now, that might sound rather confusing. Let me explain. Murder is killing with the intention to kill or with the intention to cause grievous bodily harm. And the new plan would be those are your category 1 and category 2. Intending to kill first degree, intending to cause grievous bodily harm, but actually killing second degree. So that's all pretty straightforward. Yeah. The difference is in the manslaughter. Now, there are different ways you can convict manslaughter, and everybody thinks of manslaughter as something less serious than murder. And that is true. There are some sorts of manslaughter where you kill, but you don't have that intention to kill or cause really serious harm. That's one sort of manslaughter. There's another sort of manslaughter, and the confusion is we use the same word. Yeah. The other sort of manslaughter, all the elements for murder are there. The killing is there, the intention to kill or cause grievous bodily harm is there, but in addition, there's something else. Something like diminished responsibility or loss of self-control, something which, having reached the proof of murder, makes it less serious again, is some sort of reduction. Yeah. And that's the other sort of manslaughter. And that's the sort of manslaughter that the Law Commission is now suggesting, for heaven's sake, it is murder plus a little bit of something else. Why don't we call it murder plus a little bit of something else?
Yeah.
And so that's the distinction, really.
And is this, I mean, the American system, as I understand it, has second-degree murder, doesn't it, as part of it?
It does.
But do they don't... Do they have a manslaughter charge? Is that what's missing, or does the second-degree murder cover that base?
No, I think they do have manslaughter as well. I'm not an expert in American law, and I think it is quite complicated. But I think that what the proposals for change now are, and it's important to remember this is only a proposal going out for consultation.
Yeah.
But I think what is being sought here is a way of making absolutely clear to everyone what it is that is being alleged, and then at trial what it is that has been proved, so that you mentioned Valdo Callicane earlier on.
Yes.
In his case, I think there's no doubt that no one was suggesting he didn't have the intention to kill. For heaven's sake, he had a bag full of weapons and he was after people.
Yeah.
Everyone is quite clear that this was murder plus the thing that then reduced it back to this other form of manslaughter because of his mental state, his mental illness, diminished responsibility. Now, at the moment, that hasn't been clear to people. People have become very, very distraught and upset about it, understandably. And this will actually clarify exactly what it is being alleged and what has been proved.
Do you sense this or these potential changes are about the public's thirst for some recognition or just information or education? What is your theory on why now?
That's a really good question, because the answer is it isn't why now. The Law Commission has been making these sorts of suggestions for many, many years. Some of its suggestions have been acted upon, others haven't. This is really because our law has grown up through case law. This area of our law has grown up through case law over many, many generations of cases, and it is a bit of a pig's breakfast, dog's dinner. It's a muddle, and so this would just clarify and set everything out.
Do carry on, Wendy.
I just wanted to say there are some real differences, but not as many as you might think there are.
When it comes to those, I mean, all cases, particularly cases of killing, manslaughter or murder, are horrific. And, of course, for the families, the experience never goes away. But, of course, we know that there are some stories that come up are particularly poignant in their horror. We saw... only yesterday, I think it was a man and his partner, but mainly him, found guilty of the murder of his own child that he'd adopted. You would have seen this case. The details are distressing. If you were presiding over a case such as that, Wendy, you would have, seen the horrendous images that go along with it, as would the jury, I would assume, in most of those cases. These are very difficult cases to work on, no matter which part of the law, your defence, prosecution. Nobody in an ideal world wants to be there. But what happens with those cases, as you know better than me, I only know it through the conduit of doing this kind of radio show, is that people get very, very angry. This person should be put to death. They should get a life sentence, life meaning life. This person is going to be sentenced tomorrow, is unlikely to get a whole life sentence. They're still relatively rare. But nonetheless, there'll be a minimal term. I would imagine it'll be 30-odd years or something of that nature. That's just me looking at precedent and the rest of it. As a judge, where do you go with that? Because you go home the night before, you're writing up your notes and you know what you're going to say in sentencing. Obviously, if it's murder, it's life. Minimum term becomes, of course, the key question, I suppose. How do you assess what a minimum term looks like?
Well, there are lots and lots of guidelines that assist you, so that you start off with a you look at the facts, and if, for example, the murder was committed by someone who took a weapon to the scene, out into a public place to the scene, the law tells you what the starting point for the minimum tariff is. It says there must be a life sentence, and it says the starting point for the minimum tariff is 25 years. If you were to use a gun, it says the starting point for the minimum tariff is 30 years. If there was no weapon, it says the starting point is 15 years. These are only starting points. There are many features that push them up and down. But Ian, one of the things that we haven't talked about, but your viewers might find interesting, is the new proposals change this. At the moment, all sentences for murder must receive a life sentence, and the only question is where the minimum tariff starts. The changes propose that killing with intent to kill must receive a life sentence, but that killing with intent to cause grievous bodily harm only carries what is called a discretionary life sentence. That is to say, the judge could give life, but doesn't have to. Could just give a sentence of years rather than life with a minimum tariff before you apply for parole.
And my fear is that the case we were just referring to is potentially or likely to come under that category.
I really couldn't say. I mean, I don't know enough about it to say. But judges take into account, at the moment, judges, it isn't that these things aren't taken into account. The judge does take into account the state of mind of the perpetrator at the time when the act was carried out, what the judge finds his intention to have been, what weapons were used, what degree of trust the victim had to expect from the perpetrator. Many, many different things, all taken into account for the judge to arrive at the sentence.
Do you take into account, and all of these stories are grotesque and horrific, that's kind of a given, but of course law is, to keep its kind of almost neutral position. It divorces sentiment. It doesn't, if we jailed people for life on every case that angers us, annoys us or affects somebody, we'd be putting people into jail for many years for the strangest of things, because there are clearly knock-on effects in all sorts of areas of criminality. So we have an intelligent law. It doesn't always feel like that, and people get angry, and I think we all understand that. How do you kind of remove that emotional element as a judge? Yes, you can look at your guidelines. You're still left with wiggle room based on what you've seen. You've looked at the case, you've heard two sides, you've seen all the evidence, you've spoken to all the salient characters involved. I mean, if a case angers a judge, does a judge, is it wrong? I'm not asking you to sort of suggest if you're having a bad day, you give somebody an extra 3 months. That would be bizarre. But if you feel, can a judge personally use their own, I guess partly on experience, when you've seen what cases can do to individuals or to families, what happens with that wiggle room when you feel personally angered and distressed by a case?
There's no place for personal distress in a judge's psyche. There's no place for sympathy, one side or the other. There is every place for empathy, trying to understand how people have got where they've got to and what they've done. But it's important to be, when you're a judge, it's important to be able to distinguish between saying, I am personally affronted by what you, the defendant, has done, because you've killed a child. That's different from saying, one of the factors I must properly take into account is the effect upon the victim and the bereaved. Now, the effect upon the victim is they have lost their life, of which there can be no greater wrong to do to someone. The effect upon the bereaved parents would be they will never get over the loss of a child who does, who could. And so these are features that are properly to be taken into account as aggravating features. That's not quite the same thing as saying, you make me very angry because of what you have done and I'm going to punish you for it because I can.
Yeah.
That you don't do.
Listen, Wendy, it's always insightful and fascinating when we speak with you. Let's speak again soon. Wendy Joseph KC, former criminal judge at the Old Bailey. There it is, and I just think that element of how sentencing works and divorcing any kind of opinion on a case, just looking, this is about facts, it's about law, and that's what the judge's position is. And prosecutors and defenders will do their most to obviously sell their side of an argument, but ultimately the impartiality is sacrosanct in a courtroom. Thank you to her. Back to you shortly. 0344 499 1000. More to come. Great calls on the way. Have we got a winner on the Voice of Doom on a lighter note? Find out in just a couple of moments. This is Talk.
Violence on the streets, there's no excuse for that, and if there are protests following this, I just hope that they remain non-violent. I mean, you can understand the community concerns after an attack like that.
People were saying all around the world, that's what British people now think. Have a listen to Rob from yesterday.
Morning, Jez. Well, yes, rightly, you shouldn't condone what happened. What else have people got to do? The political class are not listening. These people who are coming over here illegally, they're rapists, terrorists, they're coming over here, it's literally like putting a wall in a sheep field.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Troy in Suffolk says, like everything in this country, if you're a migrant or an ethnic minority, they won't question and dish PIP out. I have to say, I don't think there's any evidence of that being the case, certainly on PIP. But there is a lot of evidence that lots of people get PIP and there are big question marks over their application, as the evidence that we were putting forward earlier. And lots of evidence that people that should get it, we've had callers on it today, who clearly have an issue and can't get a look in for love nor money. There's ones, only half of this has come through, I think. My son waited 5 months for a hospital appointment for an eye infection because he didn't get an appointment. He's now blind. He's now on sickness benefit, has to go to Moorfields Eye Hospital. Costs 80 quid a time. Is he eligible for PIP? He's worked since he was 15. I think there might have been more to that message, but that's all that's come out. But I would have thought the whole personal independence payment is meant to assist you to be able to function in a way because your disability or your illness has curtailed your standard way of getting it. Now, if you're blind, I would suggest you've got a pretty good argument to suggest that your ability to get from place A to B is curtailed. I mean, a mate of mine's got a guide dog. You know, he's completely blind, got a guide dog, and does just incredible. I mean, you can't believe it that somebody can function in that way. But if you talk to him quietly, he'll say, it's a bloody challenge. Yeah, it's still a challenge. If you want to get on a bus, you literally have to shout in a crowd, could you tell me is that number 15 or 26? So you have all of those sort of things to get through. So, yes, I would suggest that would be completely eligible for PIP. But you've still got to get through the system. As easy as some people think it is, there's always lots of other examples where it's not quite so straightforward. Linda is in Dorset. Linda, good afternoon.
Hi. I think I'm right in saying that if you're of government pension age, you can't apply for PIP. If you're already on it and get a pension, then you can stay on it. But the thing is, I was at the odd time when I could retire when I was 61 years, 8 months, when there was that sliding scale. Now, I got cancer 3 years after that. I was still working, mind. I had cancer in 2014 and then again in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, because I've got my pension, I couldn't apply for anything apart from attendance allowance.
So your pension is meant to cover all of that?
Well, yeah, but to get attendance allowance instead of PIP, you have to have things like you need somebody to help you dress or to make you meals. And, well, if you've got bloody piles, I'm sure you can make your own meals and dress yourself.
Well, I would have thought so. And unless, you know, I mean, I did say this to the journalist we were speaking to a little earlier about this. You know, when you read these stories or someone's claiming for acne, have they also got cancer or had something amputated, but they happen to have acne, they've just put that on the form. But he said that these are separated. So they're not, you know, there are cases, and I'm sure, you know, we all know there's acne. Acne is not just an iffy spot on the end of your nose. You know, people who've got bad acne, and it's across their entire body, their torso and everything. I'm sure there are problems with that. I don't know whether personal independence payment is the way forward, though, or whether it helps.
But wouldn't you think that if you want to claim it after you've retired, as people get older, they get more problems health-wise, and that's probably why when they need PIP.
Well, yeah. I mean, you might think that disproportionate amount of people of older years would need it more than younger years. But apparently the mental health element of it, Linda, is where the big increase in claims are. And that's from a lot of younger people.
Yeah, but that's another thing. Being of the age I am now, 74, when what they call mild anxiety or mild depression now, we used to say, oh, God, I'm fed up today. And then tomorrow you'll be all right, wouldn't you?
Yeah, just having a bit of a rubbish day. But I do think just in the way that even my son, who's 12, when he talks about, I say, you know, what happened at school today? Oh, we did an assembly and there was one teacher was talking about, and they've talked about some really delicate stuff like, you know, mental health, suicide has even come up. I would say in the time he's been at secondary school, which is just this term, Linda, so he's about to finish his year 7, I would say the amount of times he's referenced mental health, not for himself, just as something that's come up, is huge. I mean, dozens of times he's talked about, we had an assembly on this and mental health on that, and there was a special thing they did today in religious studies on mental health. Now, part of me thinks, well, that's good. You know, if kids are having a crisis, years ago, kids couldn't talk to anybody. You certainly couldn't talk to a teacher. You wouldn't want to. Now you can. So that's a good thing. But there is a bit of me that thinks, as a dad and just as a citizen, are we kind of medicalising just ordinary... Are we teaching kids?
Yeah, you're making kids think.
If you're having a rough day, that's a mental health problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree.
It's tricky. Linda, thank you. Good luck with everything as well. Really appreciate that. This one from No Name Given. Ian, rather than asking the French to stop the boats, we should just ask the Russians. At least they've got warships there already. It's a very good point, isn't it? I mean, maybe that's what they were doing, frankly. I think that's why that ref last night didn't give France the penalty, because he was heard saying to a linesman, you haven't stopped the boats, you're not getting a penalty. Now, I can't confirm that, but I think it was... I got a lip reader on the case who definitely picked up the phrase, stop the boats, and you're not getting a penalty. So from that, I'm convinced that's what happened, but let's see. Maybe FIFA will look into it. Paul is in Hertfordshire. What have you got, Paul? Back to migration.
Yes, back to migration, yeah. Italy has done a deal with Albania, and the migrants have cut down by 80%.
Yeah. How did they do that? Because it's an interesting example, because Albania is kind of similar distance that we are from France, right?
What they're doing is that they're sending everybody down there, A to Z, and processing over there. And by law, if anybody is able to get the political asylum, then they bring them back. And the rest of them stay there, and then they return them whenever. So we have got 700 islands in England and Scotland. We don't need to worry about human rights and all these UNCHR. We can, as soon as they come from boats, take them straight to those islands and process over there. Mm-hmm. And once they see that, oh, God, you know, we can't have this, so the boats will stop. That's for sure.
I would have thought that's... I honestly think a 10-year-old could work that out, right? It's not hard. I don't want to abuse anybody. I'm perfectly happy to give somebody some food and shelter. I don't want anybody attacked. I don't want any of that. But we have to be logical about it. And that sounds very logical. I don't know why anybody would argue against it.
I mean, we are spending billions, millions on HMOs and all this, you know, but so why don't we spend a few million making accommodation in one of these islands where there's about 5 people on one island. On another island, there's only 50 inhabitants. Yeah. So build accommodation there and take them straight over there, and then they will be sending text messages to their friends that don't bother coming here, you know. It's not
or will you come and pick me up, maybe? It could be some of that. Love it. Listen, great call, Paul. Thank you very much indeed. Paul in Hertfordshire, 0344 499 1000. This one from Mags. The invasion will never stop. Shabana, our Home Secretary, has done nothing. Oh, sorry, she has given 660 million quid to France. We want a refund. Nigel Farage will stop the boats. That is a given. As Isabel Oakeshott said, I know she has skin in the game on the reform story, but she's also a highly experienced independent journalist, and she doesn't think stuff just because her partner thinks it. She's long had these kind of arguments. She made the point, and I've heard others say it. I think it was Gwaine Towler, who, of course, is very much of the inner sanctum of reform, who made the point that, you know, if something doesn't happen in a reform government, if something doesn't happen in a year, I think Isabel might have said 6 months, but certainly if something doesn't happen in a year, then reform are finished. They would be literally, they'd be gone as quick as they arrived. But I don't feel that is the case. But I think Farage and others would be happy to put their name to that kind of deadline. 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom coming up in just a second. We're also going to talk about the psychology of the World Cup. We're going to be speaking to Geraint Anderson. You may remember Geraint Anderson. He used to be known as City Boy when he wrote a column in a newspaper and a book. We used to have him on the show back in the TalkSport days. Ex-stockbroker, you could say, / whistleblower. He'll tell you some of the dirty secrets from the city, and it's psychology that is going to be key to England winning the World Cup this year. I don't know why I say that with a laugh. I could be wrong. 0344 499 1000. So, Voice of Doom. Before the news at 3 o'clock, we played you this voice.
Any of the noble aspirations.
Who's that? Very simple task. These are some of the guesses. Pete Hegseth, John Glenn, Cyril Smith. No, Cyril Smith. No, it's none of those. Donald Trump, Mario Cuomo. No, Diane Abbott. Yes, it is Diane Abbott. Let's hear it again.
Any of the noble aspirations.
Hackney MP Diane Abbott was the right... Of course it wasn't. George W. Bush. No, it does sound a little bit George W. Bushy. In fact, I'd say George Bush Sr. more than anything. John F. Kennedy, no. Bernie Sanders, no. John Kerry, Mitt Romney, Greg Swenson. Thomas McNally, no. John Biffin, no. Bob Dole, remember him? No. We haven't got a winner. It rolls over to tomorrow. Voice of Doom is back for day 3 tomorrow on the programme. We'll talk England, the football team, and the key word, the P word, psychology, coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk. Oh.
A man in London says, Ian, stop the boats. No chance with all of Starmer's greedy lawyer mates earning a fortune. There's also that aspect to it as well, isn't there? I mean, it is there's a whole industry going on there. What have we got? Let's move to this then. England kick off their World Cup campaign against Croatia tonight. 60 years of hurt. Another tournament, but another chance. But are England mentally ready for what it actually takes to win one of these things? Now, let's speak to Geraint Anderson, ex-stockbroker, author of City Boy. Geraint, where have you been for the last 15 years? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. I have been up a mountain in Wales.
Have you?
Trying to get away from all that sort of city madness and the crazy life I used to live. I'm married, 2 kids, all that sort of thing. So it's very, very different from when we last met, mate.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we have spoken on email a couple of times, so I'm aware that you've got lots of new things happening, like a new book as well. Just give us, very briefly, for those who don't know, just in a paragraph or so, Geraint, if you could, your history, how you came to prominence, how you came to write a book, a bit about the column that started it all, your work in the city, and why you think that entire world stinks.
Yes, okay, very quickly. I was selling trinkets on beaches in Europe that I'd bought in India. My mum got me a job, essentially, via my brother in the city. I started doing it. I promised myself I'd only do it for 2 years. But suddenly, after 2 years, I was earning more than my dad. So I suddenly thought, well, OK, I'll do it another year. I did that for 10 years. But towards the end of my career, I started thinking, this place ain't right. This is something wrong. This is going to be a crisis related to how greedy, selfish and short-term reckless gambling. So I started writing an anonymous column called City Boy, which basically just dug the dirt on and whistle blew on everything that was going on. Publisher said, why don't you write a book about that? I left the city after a near fatal motorbike accident. which made me, consider where my life was going.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the book based on that. That became an international bestseller, much to my surprise. It was called City Boy, Beer and Loathing in the Square Mile. Since then, I've been taking it real easy in the Welsh mountains.
I mean, people would... I used to take the pee out of you for this a bit when you used to come in on late nights with us on talkSPORT. It's like, yeah, it's all very well singing like a canary in your newspaper column. Not before you trousered a few million quid, though.
Well, you wouldn't be the first person to say that I might have been a little hypocritical, and you definitely won't be the last. Look, there was an element of hypocrisy because I spent a long time saying, the city's bonuses are terrible, having, as you said, pocketed 12 of them. However, having said that, and people said I bit the hand that fed me, I always said, look, it needed to be bitten. I warned about the financial crisis in over a year before it actually happened. I said, something's going to happen. This ain't right. Capitalism's fine. Earning money's fine. But the way those city boys were doing it was destined to cause problems. And unlike a footballer who gets paid even more than a stockbroker, when a stockbroker screws up like we did with the, collateralized debt obligations and the crisis that created, the whole of society is impacted. Whereas, if Thierry Henry, to pull a number from way back when, doesn't quite perform well, Arsenal would do badly. So it's a totally different kettle of fish. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Ian.
No, indeed, and I know you've, on a more serious note, jokes aside, you kind of flagged some really interesting areas for debate and discussion. And part of what you were saying is that even when bad stuff happened, it was just kind of ignored, brushed under the carpet, and as long as there was a few quid coming into the central coffers to that particular bank or stockbroking firm or trust fund company, whatever it was, then they didn't really care. It was it the lack of a moral compass that was the bit that kind of made your teeth itch?
Yeah, and, it was because it was the Wild West casino back then. It really was. I think it's got a little bit better, you'll be pleased to hear. Gordon Brown said the period from about 96 to 2008 was the period of financial irresponsibility. That was my exact career.
Wow.
And, what it was everyone turned a blind eye to the insider trading, to spreading false rumors, doing all these things that they thought were kind of victimless crimes, but actually they were victims. For example, when you do insider trading, you're basically nicking money off your granny because you are stealing from pension funds, and it's the hedge funds who are doing well. So I think it was a hand that deserved to be bitten, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And, I was concerned about the behavior. I remember my upbringing was seriously religious, and had a Labour MP for a dad, and I had a moral compass, but I kind of got swept along in the insanity of it all.
I didn't know you had a Labour MP as a dad. It wasn't Lee Anderson, was it?
No, it was not. It's Donald Anderson, who is 87 today. He was, believe it or not, he was elevated. He's Lord Anderson of Swansea now because he was chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee twice, and he was someone who Tony Blair tried to sack after he came in the second time. And I'm pleased to say that there was a free vote in the House of Commons, and they said, nope, let's have this guy. Just because he tells the truth, you can't just bully him like that.
Well, that's fair. And you've attempted to follow in his footsteps in many respects, I guess. Before we come back to England and their massive win against Croatia this evening, let's just talk about your new book. I love the title, How to Con Friends and Manipulate People. This is not an advisory guide. It's just a great title.
Yeah, and the subtitle is The Subtle Art of Being a Total Psychopath.
Yes.
So really what I've done is I've studied psychopathy for 3 years. I obviously have my 12 years in the city, and I've written a parody of a self-help book where it describes exactly how to behave if you want to win at all costs. And it's based on people like Trump or Andrew Tate or some of these, the Elon Musks of the world, i.e. a complete lack of empathy, no moral compass, purely self-interest, and it is a parody. So I unfortunately, the advice someone has told me is disturbingly effective and real, but it's not meant to be like that. It's really trying to say, look, if this is the win at all costs attitude, what becomes of us if we actually do treat other human beings as mere pawns in our game? So it's a bit of fun with some serious message, and I hope it's a kind of sequel to City Boy, and I'd like to think it's, you know, even funnier and even more timely, Ian, because the psychopaths are taking over the asylum. I'm telling you that for nothing.
It's interesting because another guy that used to come on the programme with us around about the same time, I still know him, Professor Kevin Dutton, who's written a lot about, you'll be familiar with Kevin's work, a lot about psychopathy and psychopaths. And, of course, I think one of his books was called The Good Psychopath, where he talks about how, you know, you kind of in business often, perhaps also in the competitive world, then you do sort of need... you kind of sometimes need those characters. Their lack of empathy doesn't mean they don't care. They are built that way. But if they weren't built that way, then everything would... if we didn't have any of these people around us, so whether it's Trump, whether it's Musk, you know, we can look at Musk and go, you know, the man's a psycho, he doesn't have any empathy at all, but he does employ about 28 squillion people, so that's maybe a good thing. So there's all of those little kind of contradictions, I suppose, in being a psychopath. You could be a mad axe murderer who doesn't give a toss whether or not you chop up several people. That's a different kind of psychopath, right?
That's right. And, you know, you've touched upon something really important. Evolution may have produced these people with the low empathy, the sort of ruthlessness, the ability to manipulate others for a reason. If there's a cave and there's a lion in there and your tribe need to, you know, stay in there because the weather's bad, you send in the psycho of the tribe and he deals with it because he is going to have fearlessness. He is going to be he's going to have a degree of... decisiveness. They make good leaders potentially. Like, so for example, the two classic psychopathic presidents of the States were Kennedy and Clinton, two generally acclaimed presidents. Jimmy Carter was perceived by many psychologists as the least psychopathic, and he was a total disaster.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe just like with the England team, and like with stockbrokers and maybe surgeons and SAS people and lawyers, if you've got a really incredible self-confidence and you're incredibly ruthless, you can be a great leader. And that, what I sort of been saying somewhat jokingly, but not, is that England need to channel their inner psychopath. They need their psychologists to make them more psychopathic. Yeah. But the good news is that Thomas Tuchel, I've got my suspicions that he might be on the spectrum. And I'm pleased to say that Gary Lineker agrees with me. He said, and I quote, he's potentially 60% genius, 40% psychopath. And he said that was a good thing. And I'm afraid I agree with him. If we can have that emotional detachment, it makes the difference between an elite sportsman who thrives and one who fails. It's all about the mind. And we seem to have 60 years of hurt, 60 years of basically losing every penalty apart from one. There was one, I think, where we didn't. You know, and so we need to channel our inner psychopath, and that's what I really do believe.
I wonder. I mean, I would guess in the heady world of top-tier football these days, they probably do bring in the odd therapist to give teams lectures on this stuff, and I'm sure they get mixed results. Some would go, oh, that was rather interesting, and others would think, you know, what a lot of old hooey that was, didn't mean anything to me. But I know that previously there'd been in previous England squads, I'm thinking of sort of Steven Gerrard years and the like, where they've talked about they didn't play together. There was no togetherness. They had their inner psychopath was working not as a team, because it needs to work as a collective in this case, doesn't it? They were all, so, you know, you'd have Gerrard and I don't know, John Terry or somebody like that. They'd be up against each other. They'd be up against each other on a Saturday, but then there'd be an international game and they'd play in a team. But they didn't quite manage to work that out. So although they were playing on the same team, they still sort of they liked each other off the pitch, but they were still kind of battling with each other. So they couldn't transpose that kind of force, of psychopathic nature, whatever, into a collective, because they were playing as individuals.
And that is an issue. I mean, the famous psychopathic phrase is, there's no I in team, but there are five in individual brilliance. And I think that kind of sums up the attitude. You know, it's when self-confidence becomes total arrogance and you start hogging the ball and you see your teammates as other competitors. No, I mean, I'm talking about picking and choosing certain types, aspects of psychopathy. And I would include in that, by the way, looking at this in a way that is a bit more akin to Diego Maradona than the England team in 1986. And I mention that for two reasons. One, the hand of God got results, even though it was obviously cheating. But footballers are cheating all the time by, sort of diving in the penalty box and moving the ball when it shouldn't be, etc., etc. Second thing was, he said that the only team he could have scored the second goal in 86, where he ran through about 6 players, was the England team. And he was quoted as saying, the England team are the noblest. That's how I was able to score that. Now, any other team would have nobbled him, is what he was saying. And what I'm trying to say is we've got 3 FIFA World Cup Fair Play Awards, right? We've only got 1 World Cup. I would like that ratio to be the other way around. And I'm beginning to think there might be a slight inverse correlation between looking at football as if it is a Cub Scout jamboree and looking at it like you're going to war and you are paid assassins. And I think that's the difference between, for example, Argentina's approach and ours.
And when, for those who watched France play last night, certainly in the second half, this was like a team that had booster rockets strapped to their ankles in the changing room at half-time, who really did know how to turn it on. But did it without, there didn't seem to be, there was almost a balletic nature of somebody like Mbappe playing. You don't say, this guy does not look like the SAS man coming out for the kill. He just looks like a man who effortlessly goes for it.
Yeah, obviously skill is a vital part of it, and Messi, and he was incredible with the hat-trick and all that. But I just think that whether it's tennis and you're being Djokovic and you show total emotional control when there's a championship point, or whether it's golf not getting the yips when you're doing your putts, or whether it's from the penalty spot, you're the Germans. I think they've had 5 penalty kick-offs, and I think actually they've won all 5. Whereas we have lost all but 1. That's the change in attitude. And I think the sports psychologist should be saying, forget about managing your stress. Let's just ignore it totally. And the fact that we have a German as our manager is giving me some hope. Are we going to do it? We're going to do it.
It's going to happen. It is coming home, as is your new book. Home. Garrett's new book, How to Con Friends and Manipulate People, released July the 2nd. But does that mean you can order it now already?
You can pre-order it now. That would, it's on Amazon and all that. And it's, it's basically, it's trying to leverage off 2 titles. Obviously, the How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then the other big self-help book is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Beep. And I'm trying to just say,
I get it.
You get it, Ian.
I get it. Listen, come on with us again, Garrett. It's been brilliant to see you again. It's been a long time. Lovely to have you on. Garrett Anderson, ex-stockbroker, author of City Boy, now author of How to Con Friends and Manipulate People, released July the 2nd. But you can pre-order that now. And his point, we need that little bit of, psychopathy applied. You call it a killer instinct, I suppose, in some respects. Is the England team just too nice? It's too nice. Maradona called us the noble side. That's great, but do you want to be called that, really? If you're in the boxing world and somebody said, you're going to play you're going to box Fingers McGrath. Somebody went, Fingers, yeah, he's a lovely, lovely, decent man. You don't want that reputation, do you? Not as a heavyweight boxer. 0344 499 1000. We'll have more from you in a few moments' time. Well, as we've been discussing, it's the biggest tournament on the planet, and talkSPORT have got everything covered. All 104 matches live, yes, every single one. That means the World Cup party never stops. Whether it's a group stage thriller, a nail-biting final, talkSPORT will be there with world-class commentary, incredible team of presenters and pundits to bring you every moment as it happens. Catch the action on air, on the app, even on YouTube and TikTok. However you like to listen, talkSPORT has got you sorted. Your summer just got a whole lot better. Don't miss a single kick. Head over to talkSPORT now. And, of course, here at Talk, we're also celebrating the World Cup in style. How do you fancy getting your hands on a massive, are you ready for this, £26,000 tax-free? Imagine what you could do with 26 grand straight into your bank account. Bang, there you go. Could be yours. What would you do with all that money? That's up to you. If you could do with a boost to your bank balance this summer, then here are the details how you can enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Violence on the streets, there's no excuse for that, and if there are protests following this, I just hope that they remain non-violent. I mean, you can understand the community concerns after an attack like that.
People were saying all around the world, that's what British people now think. Have a listen to Rob from yesterday.
Morning, Jez. Well, yes, rightly, you shouldn't condone what happened. What else have people got to do? The political class are not listening. These people who are coming over here illegally, they're rapists, terrorists. They're coming over here, literally like putting a wolf in a sheep field.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 524. Kev's here after the news at 4. We'll chat to him in a moment. Let's go to Heather in Nottinghamshire on migration. Heather, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi, I was a first-time caller, so thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
I was just calling really about the human rights lawyers. When the ECHR first came in, I was a young policewoman, and it obviously changed an awful lot about what we did with our roles. But one of the things with it is that it came in with Blair, and at the time his wife, Sherry, was a human rights lawyer.
Yep, that's true.
And she's gone on to make a very good living, thank you very much, on the back of that. But so have Starmer and Blair's mates, and it concerns me that our taxes are paying for human rights lawyers to become exceptionally wealthy, to pay for people that have never contributed into this country, are illegal and shouldn't be being given our money to fight their corner. And it just concerns me that there's an awful lot of people getting very rich on the back of us. And you look at who's responsible for it, and it's Blair and Starmer. And it's quite sickening, really.
Yeah, and, you know, lots of this stuff, I mean, you know, if you're a private lawyer and someone's paying you privately, that's fine. But we know that's not, in these cases, it's the taxpayer footing the bill here.
Absolutely. And if push came to shove, and you and I as taxpayers actually needed free legal advice, I'm quite sure that it wouldn't be made available to us.
Yeah. I think you might be right, Heather. Great call. Thank you for that. And lots of times people need a little bit of what's the word? Legal assistance. Trying to think of it. Legal assistance. Legal aid. That's it. And they discover, despite what you might think is a fairly convincing and compelling set of circumstances, they're told there's no room at the inn to accommodate their request. It's always been a fairly controversial area. If you talk to a good lawyer about that, they'll bore you in a good way for the entire evening on the rights and wrongs of legal aid. Lots of comment coming through still on immigration. This one came early doors from Pumpkin, who says, wait till the England game tonight and you'll hear the abuse that Keir Starmer is going to get from the England fans. Yet there may well be something in the Venn diagram of a brilliant sporting atmosphere, but the compelling, irresistible urge to throw out a song linked to your country's Prime Minister. Of course, it's possible that this time next week he won't actually be the Prime... Well, he'll still be the Prime Minister, but he would have set out the smart money says this, OK, that by Monday latest, and this all is dependent on what happens in a by-election, but by Monday latest, Keir Starmer will set out his path for standing down. Or will he cling on?
He'll cling on. It's like I keep saying, I mean, my first question to all political commentators, and I'm serious, is does our Prime Minister need psychological help? I think he does. I mean, he really is kidding himself that he can hang on. And the problem with Labour is the mathematics are such that there is a chance he could hang on. Because clearly Healey and Carnes are now launching their bid. They've got no chance whatsoever because they're sensible and they want to defend the country. Labour won't have that. You got West Streeting, you got Andy Burnham, of course. Let's not forget old Ange, Big Ange. She's hanging around in the wings as well. All these attacks on the Prime Minister will divide the numbers and mean that he might retain the majority.
Well, I think that's sort of... that is